hello. Hello, my dear friends. Let's take the seat. And let's start. Hello, hello. Now, my dear friends. No. My dear friends from Ireland, can you take the seat? My dear friends from France, can you take the seat? Netherlands, let's take the seat. Okay. Can we? Hello, Andrei Haliki, let's take the seat. My friends from Austria. Okay, good, perfect. Carvalho, good afternoon. Very good. Okay, now, let's start. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, dear President, dear members of the EPP Political Assembly, dear friends of the Austrian People's Party, OVP, and, to the rest of you, thank you so much to be here. Well, you see that I was saying to Eva, to our international secretary, that I just brought the summertime in Vienna from Spain. Because I was missing, so I said, come on, let's bring in from Croatia, from Portugal, from Italy. We brought all our summertime to Vienna. Well, let's start. So for me, it is a pleasure to chair once again this EPP Political Assembly. This time, it is very nice to welcome you in this beautiful and amazing city that it is Vienna. This political assembly is co-hosted by our members' party, the Vox Party, chaired by the Austrian Federal Chancellor, Christian Stocker, that he didn't arrive yet this afternoon with us. So I want to thanks to all of you, to OVP, to welcome us here today in Vienna. So on behalf of the Chancellor Stocker, I will first give the floor to Nico Marchetti, OVP Secretary General since February 2025, also member of the National Parliament, for this welcome. So you have the floor. Welcome.
Dear President Weber, dear Manfred, dear Secretary General, dear Dolores, dear Commissioner Suica, dear Magnus, our Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends of the European People's Party, it's my big honor to welcome you in Vienna. As a born Viennese, I am very proud to welcome you, because not only because it's the capital of Austria, it's also my home, and it's a city in the heart of Europe. And these days, it's also the capital of the heat wave. I'm very sorry for it. But it's a city where East and West have met for centuries, sometimes peacefully, sometimes loudly, but usually over coffee and cake. We're famous for dialogue. So there could hardly be a better place for this political assembly and for discussion about the future shape of our European Union. I would like to thank you, Manfred and you, Dolores, for bringing the EPP Political Assembly to Austria and for choosing one of the most important topics for us, EU enlargement. Enlargement is not a technical side issue. It's one of the central political questions for our continent. And for us in Austria, the history of EU enlargement is closely linked to the prosperity of our country. And our position is clear. The Western Balkans belong in the European Union. And I'm happy that our Chancellor and Party Chairman, Christian Stocker, will join us later and will set out Austria's position in a greater detail. But as a Secretary General, I would like to add one important point. Yes, I know, EU enlargement is negotiated by governments, but it's carried and driven by political parties. It takes strong pro-European parties to turn reforms into laws, to defend difficult decisions and to convince citizens that the European path is worth the effort. This is where our political family matters. And you know, it's not a secret that for us the polls are not looking the best, not only in Austria, also in other countries of the European Union. But I have to say, the political parties must not compete only over the headlines of the day, but over the long-term political directions of our countries. There are two poles, stability and change. And at the moment, people want change. And we know that our political family is very good in stability. We've shown that over centuries. But now the political opinion or the polls, they say people want change. But I'm also sure that we, as the European People's Party, we can also deliver change and we can deliver a long-term vision for our continent. That's what's needed. And I'm very happy that a living example for change and reforms, for strong reforms in Austria is here. Our former Chancellor, Wolfgang Schüssel, his government reformed Austria. And it's a good example that it's not the logical conclusion that if you do reforms, you annoy people and they don't vote for you. He showed us if you do reforms, you can win elections and you shaped Austria to a better country. And I think we wouldn't be in that good position now without you, your government, and your reforms and your leadership, Wolfgang Schüssel. Thank you for that. EU enlargement is the hot topic of this political assembly. And of course, enlargement must remain merit-based. The rules must be respected, the rule of law, democratic institutions and fundamental rights are not optional. But fairness works in both ways. When candidate countries fulfill the conditions, Europe must take the next step. And while full membership remains the goal, gradual integration should already make the advantages of Europe visible through a single market, European programs, hopefully very soon also roaming. So our candidate countries need a strong democratic institution. But they also need to know that reforms are recognized, commitments are honored, and progress leads to results. This is the responsibility of the European Union. That's also the responsibility of our EPP family, and also for us, the Austrian People's Party, ÖVP. Dear friends, this is a serious agenda ahead of us. But I also want to say, it's not a burden to be politician. It's an honor to be politician. And it's a job where you can do a lot for your country. So we should not face this strong agenda with only responsibility, with only risks, with only problems. We should discuss all these things thinking about chances and that we like doing politics and that we are standing for something, because I think we are strong when we are not against something, then we are strong for something. And I'm very happy to discuss that with you all in Vienna. And this evening we will meet each other at the traditional Heuriger. And if you look at the Austrian history, major decisions in Austria were made at Heuriger. Also, some might say some of the important negotiations about our independency were made from our former Chancellor and Fiegel, because that's where people come together and have also discussions and not only drinks, and I'm looking forward to do that with you together. Have a nice political assembly in Austria. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nico. We know that you are going to have elections probably in 2029, and you are well prepared here at the party with our councillor. And thank you so much to our former councillor that we are going to listen to him in the first panel at the beginning of this afternoon. But before, we want to hear from somebody that in Brussels we know him very well, that it is our commissioner from Austria, Magnus Brunner, that he's doing an incredible work in the Commission, because he achieved with us, with the EPP party, EPP group, the pact of the European Pact on Migration and Asylum, and last week we approved the return package. So I want to say, on behalf of all EPP, congratulations for all your amazing work that you are doing, defending our principles and values, but defending our European program. When we present us as a party in the European elections 2024, one of our objectives, it was our migration pact. So thank you so much, and you have the floor, Magnus. You are at your home.
Thank you very much, Dolores, to be welcomed here in Vienna, in my, it's not my sort of home region, but at least my home country is great. Dear friends, dear colleagues, Manfred, Wolfgang Schüssel, very warm welcome, of course, to your city, Vienna. I'm delighted to see so many of you here in Vienna, in my home country. As I said, Vienna is such a beautiful, hot city today. We actually wanted to make it more comfortable for our southern European colleagues, make it a bit hotter. But my home region is also a very nice region, always very welcome. I'm from the very west of Austria, so that's on the Swiss and German border. Also, well, we are quite close, Manfred, actually, from where we grew up. Thanks very much to you, Nico, for having us here, for hosting us here in Vienna. Maybe just a few words on how the whole disorder, the world disorder, is growing actually at the moment. The post-war order we were used to and which we grew up in actually has changed completely. And these changes we are currently witnessing globally are not merely a temporary blip actually. They present, I would say, profound transformations, or as I said, as Mark Carney actually put it in Davos, the new world disorder. And we see that every day. Also when we talk about my portfolio, migration, security, we're being attacked in the East, literally, actually attacked in the East. I saw that firsthand when I was at the Polish-Belarusian border, seeing the Belarusian authorities actually pushing migrants across the border, using people as a weapon against the European Union. And on the Western side, we have to rethink our relationships, of course. And that also helps us to wake up maybe a little bit. We've been too dependent on different regions in the world, be it on energy on the Russian side, or being on security and defense, depending very much on the US. And all this, I think, this shift encourages us a little bit to broaden our scope and also to diversify. And we see that we might be a bit boring sometimes. We might not be the most sexiest region in the world, a bit too bureaucratic also, but we are reliable, we are trustworthy, and we are stable. And we are democratic. Where are the most democratic regions in the world nowadays? That's Australia, that's Canada, and that's the European Union. And more regions in the world turn towards the European Union. Who would have thought some years ago that we have an agreement with India, for instance, or Mercosur? Okay, I know in Austria it's discussed a bit differently sometimes, but I think it's a good sign that more and more regions in the world want to turn towards the European Union. Or look at the UK, for instance. Who would have thought some months ago, actually, that they invest 650 million euros to take part in the Erasmus Plus program. So a lot of things are changing, and I think we should definitely use this chance and take this chance. Yes, we have to do our homework on competitiveness, on diversifying our energy, yes. And one topic where we have done our homework is migration. And that is such an EPP-driven topic, actually. This is one of the main, as Dolores said, one of the main EPP topics, and there's probably no better example, actually, for EPP leadership and delivery than migration policy, where we have just implemented a completely new shift, mind shift, actually, in the approach on migration, being fair but firm, a typical EPP approach, I would say. And this brings me to the very important topic the main topic of our discussions today here in our assembly. I think today's agenda sets the right balance also. We will discuss whether the EU is truly prepared for enlargement and whether our partners are also in the candidate countries are ready. And I very much hope that we will send a clear message, a united message, and an ambitious message also to the European Union. And to achieve this, I would say, and that's what Nico actually mentioned, we are quite famous for dialogue in Vienna and in Austria. And we need, I think, exactly the kind of approach Austrian is actually known for. It's the pragmatic approach. It's sometimes with a heavy dose of realism, I would say, also. Here in Vienna, this has been developed into an art form, I would say, over centuries. This Viennese charm has been developed here. An elegant mix, I would say, of charm on the one hand, of irony on the other hand, and also the firm belief that even the toughest problem can be solved over a good conversation, or even better with a Wiener Schnitzel or a Grüner Veltliner, and you will experience that tonight at the Heurigen, which you can very much look forward. Let's use the spirit of today. Let's have an honest debate, an open debate, adopt a strong resolution, and show once again that the EPP leads with both vision on the one hand, but also a common sense. So thanks very much again. Welcome to Vienna. All the best. Enjoy your time here.
Thank you so much, Magnus, and of course that we will go to your region. Now before continuing with the program plan for today, let's adopt the agenda. So first, any remarks about the agenda of this today's political assembly? Nothing? Okay, perfect. So the agenda is adopted. Second, we have to adopt the minutes of the last political assembly that took place 24th February. Any remarks? Nothing? Okay, so it's adopted. And now I'm giving the floor to our president, Manfred Weber, for him to present his report. So you are welcome. He's close to his region, but not, but almost in Baviera, but today we are in Austria, in your neighbor region and country. Thank you so much.
Welcome, dear friends, to our political assembly in this beautiful city of Vienna, and also from my side, first of all, thank you to our hosts today of the EPP from Austria, one of the strong, longest-standing parties inside of the European People's Party as Austrian party. And Nico, thank you so much for welcoming us. It's also great to have Chancellor Wolfgang Schüssel with us as one of those who stood always for this clear pro-European approach. And also Magnus is our vice president from Austria in the party family. So thank you so much for welcoming us here in Vienna. And we try to do it as Magnus described it perfectly. We try to do it in the next 2 days the Austrian way. So let's achieve results with this approach. Dear friends, we are gathering here in Vienna as, do not forget about this, as the biggest party of Europe. We have a huge task given us by the citizens of Europe to lead this continent. We have now 2 years where we are in office since the last European elections took place. So 2 years ago, people voted for us as EPP as the strongest and the only center party who gained seats in the European Parliament, who won the elections. We brought Ursula von der Leyen in office, we brought Roberta Metsola in office. We started our process on delivering on what we promised to the citizens of the European Union. And that's why, let me start with this first message when I do the report on behalf of us as EPP, of the presidency, that we are doing what we promised to people. We deliver on content. One aspect was already mentioned by Magnus. Please again have in mind, we fought for more than 10 years now in the European Union after the Syrian crisis arrived, after the migrants arrived in Europe. We were battling, we were struggling with the migration discussion all over Europe. And let's be honest, it's created a lot of political problems for us. Right extreme parties used this problem of migration for growing up and getting stronger. Today, dear friends, we have in the Mediterranean reduced the numbers by 70% and in the Balkan route by 90% compared with the highest numbers we had. So a huge success. Now implemented the Migration Pact after 10 years of struggling, of discussing this issue. Now we have implemented this Migration Pact and finally also agreed on the return regulation to bring illegals back to their home country. Dear friends, that's a huge success story. That's combined with some names of EPP leaders, Magnus as current commissioners, but also his predecessors who did a great job for us. Under the lead of EPP, we deliver, migration is under control. Let's be proud about this. And dear friends, please speak about these success stories, because if we do not speak about them, the opposition will not do so, the media will not do so. We have to do it. Let's be proud about this. The second big issue, the second big promise in the election campaign 2 years ago was about competitiveness. We know that's a key aspect. Can we bring back economic growth, sustainable growth towards the European Union? And there is also remarkable progress. On bureaucracy, we have finalized during the last months the omnibus on defense, the omnibus on artificial intelligence, a lot of important steps forward to make Europe more agile, more active, not so bureaucratic at the end. Dear friends, we have implemented, Magnus referred already to this, a lot of trade deals with India, with Mexico, with our friends in Australia and New Zealand. We are upgrading the trade relationship, and for sure the most important one is Mercosur. It was also not an easy exercise for us inside of the EPP family. Some had some problems with this agreement, but now it is in a way approved, or not finally approved, but on a way, and we can already learn about the positive impact on this. I think we all agree, having US in mind, having China in mind, when things are getting so difficult with such big trading partners for Europe, we have to look for alternatives who love to work together, rule-based, together with the European Union. And that's why these are huge achievements from an EPP point of view to go further with trade, to guarantee competitiveness and economic growth for Europe. We had to swallow some difficult things, and one was last time in Strasbourg, the US trade agreement with the 50% tariffs, which is not easy for us, but we were in a way ready to be the adult in the room as EPP. We have to face the reality with US, we have to face the reality with this president, and that's why at least to create certainty for our business sector is a huge important step forward. And the biggest challenge was also driven by EPP, by Ursula von der Leyen, by our last leaders discussion we had in Brussels. That was a discussion about China, how to tackle China, how to work with China in the future. And I can only ask us to put away naivety in the relationship with China. We have to speed up. We have to be clear that reciprocity is key, that a common level playing field is key for us. And I would even go further. I would even say that the future infrastructure, look to 6G infrastructure for this continent, must be, from my point of view, China-free infrastructure. We have to become independent from this continent, dear friends. I also want to applaud leaders because we agreed on the roadmap for the single market. Not easy on energy, on capital market union, on other aspects, to continue to invest into the single market. But dear friends, we are speeding up. EPP leaders were speeding up. It was Roberta Metsola, Ursula von der Leyen together agreeing on this. And this roadmap of really implementing things is already paying out. We have, for example, voted a few days ago in the responsible committee in the European Parliament about the digital euro, an extremely important tool for having future for our economy. Dear friends, we are delivering on these aspects on competitiveness. Allow me just to mention one final point in this aspect of competitiveness, which is for us as EPP still a matter of concern, a matter of discussion, where we also from a party point of view must find a common understanding. And that is to bring the Green Deal ambitions together with competitiveness. That's not easy. I have to be very, very clear on this. Having the climate discussion, the temperature outside of this room in mind, we have to be committed to fight against climate change. There's no question for us. But we have to bring it together with competitiveness. I look to Andrzej Halicki, our Polish friends, other colleagues also insisting that the ETS reforms must be business-driven, must be close to citizens. We cannot do policies against people. We have to do it together with people. And that is what is EPP on the agenda list, that we have to bring this together. An ambitious climate approach together with competitiveness and not against each other. Still, an important debate in front of us, not yet finally agreed, but we have to be, as EPP, also in this aspect, the leading force. Dear friends, we also have another task, because we know that global things are fundamentally changing, and that brings me closer to our Vienna subject, because enlargement is today our main item. Good place here in Vienna to talk about this. I first of all want to thank all our friends from Western Balkan. We had our Western Balkan summit a few weeks ago in Sarajevo, taking place in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where we gathered, where we were together with all the friends. And I really want to applaud to everyone, especially allow me to say this to our friends from Bosnia-Herzegovina, because we signed there a family declaration from all EPP parties in Bosnia-Herzegovina to be together. And hopefully this also pays out after the elections in autumn this year, that we can go into the future for a very pro-European direction of this important country. But again, broader perspective to Western Balkan. We know that the EU summit in Western Balkan, in Montenegro, was a successful summit, also driven by EPP leaders there. And that Montenegro is one of our leading countries. And I say this because I'm proud that we will welcome tomorrow the party of the Prime Minister of Montenegro, of Prime Minister Spajic, inside of the EPP family. So what I want to say is that a lot of these steps towards strengthening Europe and bringing also Western Balkan, also our countries who want to join the European Union, closer to the European Union, is driven by EPP families. I want to thank all of you for this great engagement. Thank you so much for this commitment. And we do the same for friends in the East. First of all, for Ukraine. We made it possible now, the 90 billion euros, so to have a solid financing for Ukraine, fighting every day for our values and our way of life. And we also have Moldova. I had the chance to visit Moldova a few days ago, and being together with our friends there, with Maya Sandu in the lead of this country. It's amazing what they are doing to bring this small and also poor country closer to Europe and being engaged and ready to contribute to pro-European dynamics there. And dear colleagues, I'm from Bavaria, and sometimes I do not really recognize what politicians in a country like Moldova and Ukraine are doing every day to fight against the Russian propaganda and to bring people towards a pro-European cause. That's amazing what they are delivering, what they are doing. And I also include the rest of the countries in the region fighting for Europe against Russian propaganda every day. It's really remarkable what you are doing there. And that's why, dear friends, it's a great signal that next to the 90 billion for Ukraine, we also opened now the first chapter on negotiations towards Ukraine and towards Moldova to give a clear commitment that if you progress, you have a fair chance to join the European Union. You are welcomed, and EPP is on your side. And dear friends, I say this because you know that this would have been impossible if there would have been no change inside of the European Union. What do I mean? I move now from content more to the party dimension and the party internal dynamic. We know, and probably we take it already for granted, that especially the success of our friends in Hungary made this possible, the 90 billion for Ukraine and the opening of the chapters. So here in Vienna, we are close to Hungary. And that's why let me again underline how happy we are that our friends in Hungary, TISA party, and I was 2 years ago, after the European elections, visiting Budapest and having a talk with Peter Magyar and all his friends from TISA party. And it was a new movement. They did their first steps now in the European elections, and then we opened the door as EPP group in the European Parliament for them, and we invested with trust into the TISA party. And I have to say, they repaid this trust thousands of times. They kicked out Viktor Orban of office. Now we have a pro-European TISA party with Peter Magyar again in Hungary on the table. And last time when we were together with all the leaders, I can report to you that Peter Magyar was the first time back in EPP family. We have Hungary back in the EPP. Congratulations to our friends in Hungary. Great success for us as EPP. And next to this success, I also want to applaud to our friends from Slovenia, also close here to the region, because Janez Janša won the elections and is back in office as Prime Minister, an extremely experienced politician in Europe, and we need his voice for the future of Europe, to contribute to this, to bring this together. So again, 2 new Prime Ministers. I have to report that on the other side, we also lost 2 Prime Ministers. One was in Bulgaria, where we had elections, and now we are in opposition. But I thank all our Bulgarian friends for their clear commitment for Europe, to stick to the 3 pros of pro-Europe, pro-Ukraine, pro-rule of law. So congratulations for your work. And we also, dear colleagues, lost one Prime Minister in Latvia, where Ivica is not anymore in office. I have to say the only female Prime Minister we had is now not anymore in office, and there is now an ECR Prime Minister until the elections will take place in autumn. So that's why in balance we have again 12 Prime Ministers, Council members as EPP. Just again to underline, Socialists 4, Liberals 4, ECR 3, and we have 12 of them, dear friends. We are the leading party in Europe, and that is what can make us really proud. Dear friends, we also have party internal developments where we can really be proud about. I spoke already about tomorrow, about our friends from Montenegro joining the EPP party. We will also have further discussions about the Danish Liberal Alliance, where we are in a good process managed by the laws. We also have from Czech Republic the Stan party asking for joining the EPP family. We have TISA, I mentioned it already, we have the developments in Armenia. So a lot of parties are knocking on our doors because they know being part of this political assembly means being part of the biggest party of Europe and having impact on the future developments. And I also want to mention, because I had the chance to go to Norway to visit our friends there. I was in Switzerland, and also the friends in this area are those who are in the countries, committed Europeans, are driving the debate for a pro-European dynamic in Switzerland and also in Norway. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I spoke about us, but as a party president, just one word also on the biggest opposition party in a way, or the alternative party on the left, on the socialists. Because having in mind what they are delivering on some of our member states gives us an appetite about the political dynamic for the future. Let me refer to 2 countries where socialists are in the lead or combined with the leadership. I first want to speak about Spain, because there we have Sanchez still in office. And I tell you, we have now a court case outcome where one of the closest friends of Sanchez has to go to prison for more than 2 decades. Imagine a scandal linked to Corona and other elements to go to prison for more than 2 decades. And I give you another example, that Zapatero, the former Prime Minister of Spain, has an office in the socialist headquarters as former Prime Minister. And the state services, the police, found in his office in the socialist headquarters jewels with the value of 1.2 million euros. Imagine just for a second, I told also our leaders when we were together in Brussels, that this would happen to one of our prime ministers in office, that such an amount of jewels will be found in your office, That's scandalous, dear friend. That's scandalous. and it's good to see the dynamic is against the socialists in Spain. Dolores and all the friends in Spain, you have our full support. We need in Spain, as quick as possible, elections that the people can decide about the future of Spain. Socialists are a burden for the country. Now we need applause on this moment, yeah, okay. And dear colleagues, a second example, just to give you a little bit of feedback about what is the socialist, the left, People's Party in a way of Europe is doing. I want to refer to Romania, where Ilie Bolosan was in office as prime minister. We had a stable government. We won the presidential elections against the right extreme party. It was not easy to achieve this, but people decided in future approach. And then socialists in coalition with EPP, with PNL, took a stable government with a lot of reform needs into question without any reason, without any content in a way, just to create, in a way, political instability in the country. That is the situation now. And I have to say, I'm also proud about PNL, about Ilie Bolosan, our party in Romania, that they are so clear on the reform needs and on the clear pro-European approach for Romania, that they are driving these issues together with our Hungarian party in Romania, that we are clear on our direction which we should go. And I also have to say that as EPP, we are very proud that the PNL presidency last week proposed Siegfried Mureșan as possible Prime Minister of Romania. Dear friends, we can be very proud. One of the vice presidents of EPP now proposed as possible candidates. That is what we see in the landscape. And dear friends, let me conclude with coming back to us as party, because we celebrated a few weeks ago a very important event. It was the 50th anniversary of our party. And again, having our role, which we have today in mind, that we are driving issues, enlargement. I also want to refer to 42.7, so the defense discussion, where we had a good outcome of our last leaders meeting, where we agreed on our idea for the future of defense on European level. So we are driving issues. This 50th anniversary was a great moment to recognize our history, our contribution, and also gave us a lot of motivation for the next steps in front of us. Dear friends, Dolores will report about the upcoming events in front of us. We are continuing. I just want to thank everyone in the team, in the presidency, also in our staff, in the headquarters. Just let me say one word to our staff, because you also saw that we had one change, that Tom van den Ketelare left our headquarters. So he got a very, very good job offer from the private sector, and I cannot be angry with him because he just voluntarily decided to accept this staff offer. And I want to thank also Christina and also Beatrice taking over and also managing now the headquarters in this transitional period of time. But let me say a warm thank you to Tom van den Ketelare. Over the last 2 years, he did an incredible job for us as EPP party. Thank you, Tom, and we will send the best wishes also to him for his future. Dear colleagues, we are delivering as EPP. You can trust in EPP, in promises from EPP. We are growing, dear friends. We are receiving more and more support. More and more parties want to join us as EPP. And based on the 50th anniversary, we can be proud about history and have the motivation to lead into the future. And Vienna's political assembly will again be a milestone for driving this development as EPP. Welcome again, and let's enjoy the days here in Vienna.
Thank you so much. Now my report, I'm going to be very short because we are out of time. I'm going to do an overview of the events and big meetings we have ahead. I will do it chronologically with one exception, EPP Summer University, that I will give the floor to the Vice President McGuinness at the end of this update, just 2 minutes. But first, we have 15, 16 July, we will hold the first edition of the EPP Libertas Forum. It's going to be in Madrid. I have to say that this forum is the first time that we're going to do it among EPP family in all Europe, plus all the center-right parties in all Iberoamerica. You know that Iberoamerica has 19 countries, and at the end we are going to be 14 European leaders, 20 international secretaries of our EPP, European Union parties, 19 Ibero-American leaders from 14 countries, and 20 Ibero-American parties from 16 Ibero-American countries. We will sign a joint conclusion as EPP family together with international organizations, UPLA, OTCA, IDU, and CDI, that all of them, they are going to participate in this Forum Libertas. And then we did a strong agenda, but the most important thing it is that we cannot leave Iberoamerica by Trump or by China or by Putin or by the BRICS. I think so that Portugal, Italy, and Spain, they are the natural bridges, with Europe to Iberoamerica. We have a huge opportunity in this Forum Libertas to join with them, that both of us, Europe and Iberoamerica, we are the west part of the world. So we want to share with them all our concerns, all our needs, and to create this working group with all of them, because we cannot leave all this Ibero-American space to other parties from other, extreme right, for example, or to other protagonists not from Europe. So thank you so much to all of you and to all the EPP team to make possible this amazing and the first meeting about, Ibero-America and Europe. Next point, it is in September 2028, in September 28th and 29th, we are going to hold the political assembly in Toulouse. The topic will be competitiveness and reindustrialization, and we're also working towards the Assembly having completed a fact-finding mission to Denmark to analyze and assess the potential membership of the Liberal Alliance Party. We are going to do it at the beginning of September, then fact-finding mission at the beginning of September to Budapest. As our president explains to us, TISA wants to be a member of our political family, and then in the Green Week of September we are going to do the fact-finding mission to Armenia. Then October, International Secretaries Retreat. Last year we did the first one. It was very successful. So this time we are going to have it 29th and 30th of October. This time it's going to be in Spain, but it's not going to be in Barcelona. It's going to be in a beach city, very nice and very known, that the name is Sitges, that I suppose that you know very well. Then November, we are going to do two things important. The Foundations Retreat, that it's going to be 9th and 10th of November in Berlin. We will hold the first EPP Foundation Retreat. As you know, we have been organizing a series of meetings with all the foundations from all our national parties, plus Martin Center, of course. We have asked them to provide an overview of their activities and the regions of the world in which they operate, the aim of identifying how we can better align efforts and coordinate more effectively so that the EPP as a political family develops a positioning and strategy across 6 global regions in addition to our European priorities. So totally 7 regional groups, because Europe is one of these ones, another is Ibero-America, another is North America, United States and Canada, then it's Africa, Pacific, Middle East, and Balkans. So I have to say here to all the international secretaries that you are leading all these groups, thank you so much, because it's amazing the work that you are doing, and thank you to all your foundations from your parties, because it is amazing this work, because I think so that it's going to be the first time in our lives that we're going to have a unique strategy on our think tanks and our associations in all these regions. Why? Because another parties from Europe, they are doing the same, and they are occupying these spaces. So we want to lead these spaces in all the world. So this is going to be a very good, experience and tool. And then late in November, 19th and 20th, we will also hold the next edition of the campaign managers meeting. These sessions have been extremely valuable, helping us learn from one another and strengthening the ties between teams and parties. So this time in November, we are going to have TISA party, the Hungarian party, to explain to us the successful campaign that they did in Hungarian. And then December, we will hold the December Political Assembly. Assembly on 7th and 8th of December in Brussels, and EPP Summer University. Now I'm going to one of the next events that we are going to take place. It's going to take place 31st of August and 1st of September. We will celebrate the first edition of this Summer University in Dublin. First, I want to congratulate the Irish people, because in a few days, tomorrow, no? Today's 29, no, in 2 days, you are starting the rotatory presidency in the European Council, and we know that you are going to do it incredible. So now I'm giving the floor for 2 minutes to McGuinness, to our Vice President, to explain a little bit, yes, this important event in Ireland, and in this presidency, you know, Irish presidency, that we're going to have it at the end of August. And then we're going to, David McAllister, I'm going to say, you know, I'm not going to come to lecture. After McGuinness, McAllister can have the lecture and present the former chancellor and the rest of the panelists to start this panel this afternoon. So thank you so much.
David, I know you're very patient, so I'm going to say in 1 minute why you should come to Dublin for this very unique summer university. It's a pilot project. It will be cooler in Dublin. We will not be congratulating ourselves on how great we are, even if we are great, because I think we can do better. So the idea behind this pilot project is to listen and engage with academics and ourselves on where we can do better, the things we're missing, and the things that we think and take for granted that the party can be as it is, because the status quo is not the future. So for me, Dublin is about looking to the future, looking at ourselves, warts and all, although we're very pretty in this room, but I think we need to examine ourselves as a political movement and deciding where we need to go and what changes we need to make. But much more importantly, I want you to give a rousing round of applause to my good friend and former neighbour in the European Parliament, Mr. David McAllister. The floor is yours.
Well, Varid, thank you. That was a surprise welcome. No, actually, I'm not going to give a big speech. I'm just the moderator of this next panel. I would just like to say right from the beginning, at the beginning of this item, that I'm also very happy to see you all in Vienna, and I'm pleased to chair this important panel on one of the EU's key priorities, and most importantly, as our President Manfred Weber just outlined, one of the EPP's core objectives. As European People's Party, we have stated so many times in the past, and we will continue to do so, that only a larger European Union in the end is a stronger European Union. The European Union is not complete without our Western Balkan partners and without Ukraine and Moldova. And let me add, looking north, perhaps also other countries. Today, in this panel, we should reflect not only on how far the candidate countries have come, but also on where the European Union stands. Is Europe ready to match their ambitions? Can we move from repeated promises to concrete decisions, clear timelines and gradual integration even before full membership? There are many ideas, proposals and concepts, but how make them work and how to match all these various expectations of our partners? For all these questions, we have prepared an excellent panel with experts who are constantly dealing with those questions. But before we open the panel, I am now honored to give the floor to a giant of Austrian politics, Dr. Wolfgang Schüssel, the former Federal Chancellor of Austria, a politician who has served this nation as a Chancellor for 7 years and the European people for many more. That's why please welcome Wolfgang Schüssel warmly for his keynote speech and to set the stage of the topic today. Herr Bundeskanzler, Sie haben das Wort. So 10 Minuten. Ja.
Thank you, David, so much for this friendly words, President, lieber Manfred, friends, neighbors, citizens. welcome to my home city. I thought I'm one of the Aborigine Vienna, of the few Aborigine Vienna, but Nico is also one of these, because we are really a mixture of nearly everything. We are de facto a minority Aborigines, the rest is coming from everywhere, from Hungary, from Czechia, from Slovak, from the Balkans. We have Ukrainians, 100,000 of Ukrainians here. We have refugees from everywhere. So this is really multifunctional and a multilingual and a multi-political city. So welcome to Vienna. My issue is, the theme, what I was asked for is the EPP ready for action. And my answer is yes and no. Yes, we are ready. If a crisis is there, then we are ready to act. Financial crisis 15 years ago, COVID crisis, Ukraine crisis, the Russian aggression, then we are ready to act. No, because we Europeans, the European Union is not constructed for a hostile world. We are de facto a peace project from the very beginning to avoid any issues, any dangers of hostilities between our countries during the last 200 years. We fought 300 wars against each other. So Europe is a peace project. We are Nobel Prize laureate for peace 15 years ago. So we are not prepared for a hostile world. And we learned the lesson. This is interesting to see. 2000, before the Ukraine war, Europeans spent around 200 billion euro for defense, for our defense, because we de facto outsourced defense to the Americans. Now, at that time, 200 billion, now it is 400 billion. And within 2030, we will spend 800 billion. So this is something. So we woke up. We are prepared. So we are ready to act. Second, our European economic success story is challenged. De facto, our model is unique on the world scene, combining democracy, social market economy, social cohesion, a good social security system, free trade. This is a unique element. This is no one else is really a messenger and core country, core continent for these issues. And we are now challenged from all sides. We are challenged, of course, via China's communist state capitalism. We are challenged by America's tech capitalism with a very strange philosophical and religious foundation. Later I will say something on that, because this is something we should really be aware of, what is on the world scene. We are also challenged from the left. Remember, I think 1 month ago there was an Economist, page 1, the rise of the Gen Z socialism. This is and this is true. This is a very strange revival of a kind of communist ideas. Look to New York. Yesterday we had the same experience in Graz. A communist mayor, she won 36%. 36% in Austria. Imagine. Incredible. So there's a rise of a very strange philosophy. The state can protect us all. The state has the responsibility for nearly everything, etc. And de facto, we are a little bit guilty for that, because, you know, Germany, 50% state quota. It's 50%. Helmut Kohl years ago said, with 50% socialism begins. We in Austria we have 53, France has 57 or something like that. So I think we have too much state. I always said, mehr privat, weniger Staat, more private, less state. This was my issue at that time, of course not long ago, but de facto there is a certain truth in it, because this means less state, strong state, but a lean state. This means de facto more freedom for the citizens, more freedom for the economy, especially for the Mittelstand, for the small and medium-sized companies, etc. So we are de facto challenged. And during the last 6 years, we saw de facto stagnation in Europe, within Europe. And the autocrats are on the rise. So I published a book last year about Zuversicht. Zuversicht is hard to translate. This is not confidence, but confidence is a little bit different. Zuversicht is much more. This is the fact. It's also not hope. Hope is a feeling. This is something we hope for something. But Zuversicht is more based on realistic terms. This has something to do with reality. So I published a book on Zuversicht, and I will try to give a little bit of Zuversicht to this auditorium. One, the European Union is still a very strong economy, and we are stronger than we sometimes believe ourselves. Take 17 trillion euro, this is the EU as it is today. If you add the candidate countries, plus 2 trillions. If you add Norway and Iceland, which is possible, by the way, add 2.5 trillion euro. If you add the UK, 3.8 trillion. So altogether, and I think this is a kind of a core, a wider core, okay. But this is 26 trillion euro versus America. USA has 28. So this is not out of reach. So we are still somewhere. So we are still strong. We should be aware of that. Second, we are not alone. We are 450 million people, plus candidate countries, plus 200 million. If you add the free trade arrangements we recently organized, plus 2 billion. And de facto, this could be the core of a new alliance, not only in trade and economy, but also imagine an alliance for values. International law, international cooperation, international free trade, etc. So I think an alliance of values, this is something where a lot of people around the world are waiting for, and I think Europe should take the lead. Third point, enlargement. You mentioned, all of you mentioned enlargement. I was, 98, I was foreign minister, and I was chairing the EU Council at that time. At that time, we started the enlargement with the first candidate countries. Some of them are here. Miki Zurinda, my old friend, for instance. I mean, we started with the first 6. It was a big success. When I was Prime Minister, 2006, we added not only the 10, but plus Romania, Bulgaria. Imagine where would Bulgaria and Romania and Europe stand if we would not have integrated Romania and Bulgaria at that time. Imagine. It would be a gift for the Kremlin and these troll fabrics and machinery which is already there. So, and then I think we decoupled Croatia from Turkey, which is important. Therefore, Croatia is within the European Union. So enlargement is a big success story. Of course, it's not so easy as it sometimes seems. It has problems in substance. We have to draw clear lines, red lines, what is necessary and what should be absolutely forbidden. Corruption, for instance, or the acceptance of the rule of law, the principles of the functioning of the European Union, and of course, not blocking others. Very important. So I think, but this is normal, the normal challenge, the normal business case, and you are aware of that. I think what is also important to see, there are political hurdles, and they are not easy to overcome. For instance, France has a de facto constitutional rule. If there is a new enlargement, you need either a 3/4 majority in the National Assembly or a referendum. So it's not so easy to win, and there will be a lot more referenda, potential referenda. So not easy to overcome. So my idea, and this is what I advise you, is de facto a 2-step approach. I think it would be quite good to have a 2-step. First, an integration to the EEA, the European Economic Area, and then second step, the full membership. Why? Because first of all, EEA means you are fully integrated in the economy, in the single market, etc., but with specific arrangements in agriculture, in financial, and of course some interim arrangements, labor market, etc., and if you are a member of the EEA, Sweden, Finland and Austria were before becoming member, we were EEA members, then it's much easier to explain to our own citizens, but also to the rest of Europe, we are de facto well prepared. So there is no big problem to take the next step. So I think that would be a quite interesting example. I know the Commission is not really happy with that. The member states are also, the new member states, the candidates are always a little bit skeptical on that. But I think Edi Rama, by the way, and Vucic proposed the same idea a few weeks ago in the German newspaper. But I think it would be a quite clever step forward to overcome political hurdles. Then, of course, also something on Zuversicht. I think the economic tools are on the table. The Draghi report, the Letteri report is there. And if we would add the ideas of these two gentlemen, it would be an immense boost for our economy and for the growth of our economy. Then also, you mentioned the big problem of climate change versus competitiveness. Don't forget, and nobody knows that, of the normal civilians and citizens in Europe. The European Union is the only continent which de facto reduced CO2 by 30% during the last years. 30%. This is not nothing. No else on the world scene was ready to do it. Or take the CO2 price. This is something which is getting more and more support on the global scene. Take the success stories in medicine. De facto, the cancer mortality is down by 20–30%. Mostly also by European researchers. Take our life expectancy. Since 2000 plus 3 years. This is not nothing. We are now preparing our own financial payment system, Vero. Very interesting. We are preparing a European cloud system, not to being so dependent from American tech giants. We are preparing our own satellite startups, not only asking Elon Musk or the Chinese to have to send our own satellites into space. On the EU budget, very interesting. No one else has a 7 years budget with a great stability inside. I think my own expectation is we should really look for a new own resource. Otherwise, it will not be possible to get all the necessities on the European level, on the national levels, and of course, the future necessities and opportunities under one head. Let me allow at the end one political remark, because we are all politicians and we are living with our own political parties. Most of us are Christian Democrats, and we are also philosophically challenged. And this is something which I really remind us or ask ourselves to think a little bit on it. From the left side, as I already said it, there is the rise of socialism, de facto a kind of communism on one side, but also on the tech side. Read what, for instance, Peter Thiel and others, Elon Musk and all these people are doing, are saying, are publishing. This is de facto a completely new philosophy of a kind of a Nietzsche's Übermensch, de facto a combination of machine and human brain, which has de facto nothing to do with our Christian democratic values. We should know that. And we should prepare for such a conversation and for such a confrontation, because it has nothing to do with our Christian democratic values, personality, subsidiarity, and all these things, also the rule of law, etc. And the next year, by the way, one of the intellectuals of our party is Klaus Mertes, Pater Klaus Mertes, who is now chairing the Adenauer Foundation of the CDU. He published a lot of very interesting articles on these issues, and really we should discuss these issues, because this is a new momentum and a new confrontation which we have to confront, we have to stand. And the last point, next year, is, you said it, are important elections ahead. And we should think, why are the fringes right and left now winning? And why is the center in some areas now weakened? And honestly, maybe you wouldn't like it to hear, but I think there is something which we should be really ready to accept. There is a critique on elitism, on elites, a critique against arrogance, corruption, of course, against bubbles. And I think there's something truth in it. Right? We are all living in a bubble, in a national bubble, if you're in a government, if you are in Europe, in the European Parliament, the European Commission. This is a kind of a bubble, and we are always overwhelmed with the real problems of the day. But citizens, they don't care about our problems, about the tensions within the bubble. Not at all. They are interested in what is the result. Are you able to deliver? Are you not able to deliver? Are the results interesting for us? Are we benefiting? Or is it just talking about your success, whatever? So I think what is really necessary is what the founders of the EPP, Schuman, De Gasperi, Adenauer, and later on Helmut Kohl and others are telling us. We should really be very close to the citizens, looking to the small man on the street, to the small lady, small woman on the street, especially looking for children. You are responsible for demography, Commissioner. This is a real issue, by the way. And for us Christian Democrats, this is a scandal. De facto what the Chinese had with their one-children strategy. If you leave aside the migrants within our own countries, in Germany, in Austria, wherever, we de facto realized the one-child strategy without saying it. But this is the reality. So I think this is something we should really be aware of, and we should really deal with the future. The people, the citizens, are not so much interested in our successes in the past. They are looking what is ahead of us. Are you ready to deliver? Do you really understand what the problems are for us average citizens? And I think our answer must be to create a kind of repurposing the institutions, the governments, the courts, the parliaments, the parties, but also the European institution, to create a feeling why there is an added value for the European Union. My personal conviction is quite clear. If we won't have the European Union today, we should create it here and now, maybe in Vienna. Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much, Herr Bundeskanzler, for this inspiring introductory speech. We will now move on to our panel. I would like to invite up front here on the panel Ms. Ines Domingos, Mr. Harman Krull, Mr. Tilman Kuban, and Mr. Adnan Cherimacic. So that's your seat. Warm welcome. Minister, you're to my left-hand side. Bon dia.
Bon dia.
Hallo Tilman. Dobar dan. Since we are running a little bit late and we're expecting the Austrian Chancellor at about 5 o'clock, without any further ado, let's kick off with our panel. I would like to begin with Ms. Ines Domingos, the Secretary of State for European Affairs of Portugal since 2024, a former advisor to the President of the Republic, and with a very strong background in economic policy and European affairs. We also have the pleasure to have her as a co-chair of our EPP General Affairs Ministerial meetings of the Council formation where EU enlargement is concretely discussed. So, dear Ines, you are very experienced in European affairs. Can you tell us your opinion on the current state of play for the European enlargement? Is the European ready to take on new members? Are the member states ready? Who would know better than to answer this question? Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me here, and thank you to EPP for having us as well. I'll just be very brief because we're a bit out of time. So I'll just like to make 3 points. First, the question is whether we are prepared to receive candidates. And I would split it in 3 main areas. The economic area, then perhaps the funds, and then ultimately the institutional side. On the economic front, I think many of us who have gone, I've been to Moldova several times, to Ukraine, to several Western Balkan countries, and I think from an economics perspective, the sense that I get and what we experience and we know from the data is that it is not only that we need to be committed, we committed to something and we need to respect our commitments, is also that these countries represent a significant economic opportunity. Altogether, our candidates are 60 million people, of which 40 million are from Ukraine. It's in Ukraine, actually. So 20 million people in Moldova and Western Balkans, and they have significant opportunities in infrastructure, in all areas, in areas of knowledge, which is really important, and will be and can become also, from a security perspective, an important add-on to our food security, for instance, if we consider Ukraine in particular. Now, from a funds perspective, because former Chancellor was explaining here about funds and the multi-annual financial framework, of course, for many countries, we see that as these countries come in, it will represent a budget. It's an issue as in it will become important for the budget as well to take those countries into consideration. And the truth is that we already are. So it's not going to be, it looks like a novelty, but ultimately when they do come in, it's not such a big novelty. We have already funds for Western Balkans to support their reforms. We have, of course, the 90 billion that was referred for Ukraine. We have specific funds for Moldova as well. So it is already a charge upon us to help those countries. And so it will continue. And it is important that we do so. It's not a big novelty. And the third question is institutional. And you were referring about what happens to those countries. And here I would like to ask 2 questions, really. Are we ready from an institutional perspective? And I think we are, actually, much better than we have been in the past. Mostly because we have tools that we did not have a few years ago. We, in the Council, General Affairs Council, we discuss we do a review of the rule of law of most countries. We, actual members of the European Union, that would continue once they join. We already have in the funds significant, in the European multi-annual financial framework, we already have a link between giving out funds and the rule of law. And we have also the opportunity to work together closer in some areas through the permanent cooperation structures that we have, particularly on defense. So we have many instruments that allow us to be more flexible when we do receive those candidate countries as member states if there's a need. We've discussed gradual integration. We're used to that. Those of us who have been to several of these countries, I have experience, which is really nice, the Rome like at home thing, because it's even good for, it's not only good for people in Moldova, for instance, it's good for me when I go there because I spend less on roaming. So we know this is good for us as well. It's not only good for candidate countries, it's good for us. A last word, we need to be credible. We are the union, the European Union of many things. But in this day and age, we need to be the European Union of credibility, because frankly, it's lacking in many places. And we are the European Union of credibility, so we need to be credible on this. And the last word, if we are not ready, and I think we are ready, but are we really ready not to have those countries with us? And I think we seldom ask this question, because if we do not have these countries with us, these countries will be with somebody else. They'll not be on their own. So we need to reflect very hard on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ines. Now I turn to the other side. Our next panelist is Harman Krul. He's a member of the Dutch Parliament and he's the party whip of the CDA, the Appel. Harman is a member of the not only Dutch Parliament, but also a former Navy officer representing a new generation of leaders committed to public service and strengthening society in The Hague. Now, Harman, the Netherlands, how can I put it, have many times been quite critical on the concept of European enlargement. Now, with the dreadful war in Ukraine ongoing for more than 4 years and the change in the European security architecture, do you see this overall stance in The Hague shifting?
Thank you for the question, David. And I think in general, the debate in the Netherlands is shifting. So you used the word critical, I would use the word skeptical even. We've always been quite skeptical on European enlargement. And we look at it through a traditional technical lens. We've got economic reforms, we've got institutional readiness, rule of law, and of course the Copenhagen criteria. And I think those criteria still matter. They do. However, the invasion of Russia in Ukraine has fundamentally shifted Europe's security environment. And that has added a new element to the debate, and that is that it's not just about economics or institutions, it's also about peace, about stability, about security. And when I look at the debate in the Netherlands, I would say that the question used to be, should these candidate countries join Europe? Should we grant them this favor if they meet to our standards? And I think the question is shifting to, can we survive without them? Can we have a secure future without these countries? And I think without letting go of those criteria, without lowering the bar, we should ask ourselves the questions, and we are in the Netherlands, should we have more ambition when it comes to European enlargement? And I think there's great steps being made there, and we've got a new government, and there have been very positive remarks about this. So yeah, I'm quite optimistic about the future, where I was a bit more skeptical in the past.
If I could just add a short question, since you've had a former career in the Dutch Navy, would you also say that security and defense-related matters might change the Dutch position on enlargement?
I think so, yeah. We're still skeptical and conservative when it comes to integrating defense forces within the European Union. I think we will remain that. However, having served in the Navy myself and having seen how we use around 35 different operating systems just alone to communicate within EU, it's crazy. And when I speak to my former colleagues and we address this problem about not being integrated enough, and they always tell me, and they always say, well, yeah, we should become more integrated. We should use one communication system. Everyone agrees. But then my colleagues from France say, yeah, it should be our communication system. And my colleagues from Germany will say, yeah, we also agree, but we should use our communication system. So we still have some issues to tackle there, but I do feel there is a more understood, there's a much more understanding of the real threat that we face as Europeans. And that also translates to our defense policies, which have become more pro-Europe as well.
Right, dankjewel. Now I turn to Tilman Kuban, who many of you will know, the former chairman of the CDU youth organization Junge Union. He is now serving as a member of the German Bundestag, and he is the spokesperson of the CDU-CSU parliamentary group on European Union affairs. Tilman, Germany plays a pivotal role in the European enlargement process. Very recently, Chancellor Merz supported the concept of gradual integration, along with ideas of progressive observer status and the early participation in EU programs. Could you give the political assembly some insight on this and how you see the European Union's readiness to integrate new members?
Yeah, David, thank you very much. And first of all, let me underline that we as CDU, we as the German government still want to have Europe for all Europeans. So that is why we want to start a discussion, and that is, you've mentioned the letters of Mr. Merz, also the initiative with the French government, where we want to take responsibility for the future. And because we are in the time of the World Cup, let me say, to set the ball rolling. So I think this is a good way to discuss now regarding Ukraine. We are discussing, Manfred said this before, also about the Article 42.7, also about not only about the NATO security guarantees, also about the EU security guarantees, and that is why we want to have a different way of a discussion about how to integrate, also how to find solutions for the different states regarding the Western Balkans. Let me come to Montenegro. I know Miki Spajic will join. These close friends, they are doing an impressive work, and that is why, from my perspective, the accession process for Montenegro is a matter of trust for the European Union. We all the time said you need to fulfill all the criteria of the acquis, and if there is somebody who is doing it, who is really entering and who is closing all the chapters, afterwards we will be asked, can these guys really be part of the European Union? And this is why we need to now focus on that. And as I said, it's a matter of trust also for all the others. When we talk about the other 5 countries of the Western Balkan, I think we need to talk about different ways to find a membership or a way of gradual integration, because they are now waiting for more than 20 years. The people get upset. The other players are around in the region. We have a clear position that we don't want to have Russian, Chinese, Turkish satellites over there. We want to have true friends of Europe, and that is why we need to find new ways for the accession process. And the third dimension is also that we need to talk about the northern way of Europe. When we are talking about the referendum in Iceland, when we talk maybe also about Norway, others are also talking about Canada. But I think this is a third dimension where we need to talk about on our way towards Europe, to have a bigger European Union. But my last point is, when we are talking about a bigger European Union, we are also need to talk about to be ready, not for the countries to be ready, but also for the European Union to be ready. Therefore, we need to set a few reforms, because these 2 things, readiness from the countries and readiness from the European Union, are 2 sides of the same coin.
Thank you, Tilman, for this point of view from the CDU-CSU parliamentary party side. And finally, to finish the first round, Adnan Sherimagic, you are a senior analyst at the European Stability Initiative. You focus on EU enlargement, democracy, and the Western Balkans, of course, drawing on experience in diplomacy and European institutions. So could you please give us your thoughts on the future of European enlargement, and specifically, what do you see for the Western Balkan countries, and where do you see the most significant challenges arising for the candidate countries on the one hand and the European Union itself on the other?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. When I look at the future of enlargement today, I believe the biggest challenge, not just for the European Union, but also for the candidates, is called Montenegro. And I don't say that as a criticism, but because of what Montenegro now represents, both for the candidates and for the EU itself. I have to say that something really surprising happened in Montenegro since 2024. The Commission and several member states have pushed to help Montenegro to prepare for membership. And the results, I have to say, in past 2 years have caught even the biggest and most proponent observers on enlargement off the guard. First, the EU has taken more decisions on Montenegro's accession process and more consequential decisions in the last 2 years than in 10 years before that. Reforms in Montenegro have accelerated. In the last reporting cycle of the Commission recorded more progress in Montenegro in a single year than in 8 years before. And third, all of this happened against domestic political backdrop in Montenegro, which, if it happened at any other point in 2 decades of independence of Montenegro, it would have, for different reasons, produced fragmentation, instability, and perhaps even more conflict. So the EU process, it did not just keep the country together, it pushed Montenegro forward. And I think that is a real achievement that we need to remind ourselves today. But this achievement has also created a genuine challenge, and not where most people are looking. In Brussels, people are talking about the accession treaty. They're talking about the provisions, transitional periods, safeguards, but the real worry lies elsewhere. And I think Chancellor Schüssel mentioned it. It is what happens once the treaty is signed. Like Croatia, Montenegro will then receive an observer status in the Council and the European Parliament. But everything else, all the benefits for the citizens, such as single market, for businesses, will come only once the 27 member states ratify and Montenegro becomes a full member. And no one today on the EU side can say that this will really happen, that the ratification will happen. In some capitals, as mentioned, it requires a parliamentary supermajority. In others, in at least one, a referendum. In the region, the effect in the Western Balkans, the effect of this is polarizing. The pro-European voices are saying if Montenegro can do it, then our governments should do it as well. But I have to warn you, the majority of politicians and citizens in the region see that kind of approach as naive, because majority of them say that while Montenegro is doing reforms, it's progressing, in the end, one country will block it. Ratification or the process will come short, and citizens and businesses will not have any benefits of it. There's a small minority which says even if Montenegro does make it across the goal and becomes a member of the EU, that means for the other countries in the region very little, because for us it means not that we will do the same quickly. And I have to say, in the closed-door meetings on the EU side, I hear very even rougher and more blunt questions. They ask, what is the point of carrying one country through the risk of ratification if the others cannot follow? And what does it mean to accept one country for the leverage that the EU has in the rest of the region? And here is, for me, the uncomfortable part. No one on the EU side can answer this with certainty and say, don't worry, this is not going to happen. And this is the situation in the Western Balkans. But to finish on an optimistic note, let me quote the late Wolfgang Schäuble, who said in 2018 that with an all-or-nothing approach, one does not come far in a parliamentary democracy. And I see real hope in one idea that follows this Schäuble's advice. It is set out in the final paragraph of the Merz-Macron non-paper prepared ahead of the Tivat summit, something we've mentioned already here. And in similar wording, it is present in the non-papers drafted by Austria and Italy. The idea is very simple. After the candidates genuinely reform themselves, that means on the rule of law, on democracy, on adopting EU standards, full participation in the single market and the four freedoms can come. Not in sectors, not in fragments, in full and before membership. And the wording of this non-paper by Chancellor Merz and President Macron is very precise. Full participation in a European Economic Area plus model. And I think this would change everything. First, it would remove the all-or-nothing pressure, what Mr. Schäuble said. Pressure of ratification. Today, candidate must wait for both its own reforms and 27 member states to agree in order to get the benefits for citizens and businesses. Ratification would still matter for full membership, but once the treaty is signed, these countries would not just get observer status in the Parliament and the Council, its citizens and businesses would get the application of the single market immediately. Second, it would silence the voices who say Montenegro will end up with nothing, because even if ratification stalls, the country would already be inside a single market. The citizens and businesses would feel the benefits. And third, it would let the EU offer the same to everyone else, to Albania, to Moldova, to Serbia, even potentially to Ukraine. Something credible they would believe being able to achieve on their own. And the EU would not be inventing something new. It is not joining the European Economic Area, because the non-paper precisely says EEA+, and that is the wording the Commission used for the newest version of the association agreements with San Marino and Andorra. It has very good legal solutions, very good solutions in it. So to conclude, the single market earned through reform and detached from the ratification lottery gives the EU much needed leverage, not just in the Western Balkans, but also Moldova and potentially in Ukraine. It gives the reforming governments in Podgorica, but also in Chisinau, exactly the argument they need to keep going, and exposes those politicians and those candidate countries that really do not want to reform.
Right, thank you very much. I have been informed that we're expecting the Austrian Chancellor at about 5:15, so we have roughly 20 minutes left. We don't want to do this all on our own up here. We want to be as inclusive as possible. If you would like to take the floor and ask a precise question, please raise your hands. I'm happy to do so. In the meantime, there's the first question. Please, madam.
Hello, thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you for a very good panel, and the speeches before was very inspiring. I'm here from the Committee of Regions. As you know, we have working groups and joint consultative groups with all these countries, and me myself, I was chair of the JCC Montenegro and have been also in Western Balkans and now chairing the working group Turkey. My question is that through my years, I can see a great difference in countries where have close connections to the local and regional level, that the speed of accession plays a huge part. But in these occasions, I would like to hear more what you see on the cooperation with the local levels, because I have been, I should not say what countries, but where local governors or mayors would come and say, why are we here? Or we are here just to be like a proof of evidence that we are. They never ask us anything otherwise. So that's my question. Can you see in your roles how connected, because in our documents we can see the grassroots level, how they see EU is going to play a part if they really want to join. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try and collect a number of questions, and then it's up to the panelists to decide on which questions they would like to answer. Next is Paul Rübig.
Paul Rübig, SMA Europe. I want to thank Chancellor Schüssel for his advice. I think it's a very good idea to think a little bit more on the pension system, the state pension system, at least also the question on company pension system and private pension system. If we could freeze this private money, and if we could secure the pensions for the young people, that could be a really EPP success story. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll go to our colleague Novakov from Bulgaria.
Thank you, David. I would like to raise a question about corridor number 8 when it comes to enlargement, because the funding is already there. In the future of MFF, we have our position to fund, the enlargement of that important even for the defense of the whole Union, Corridor number 8. But we need dedication and commitment from Albania and North Macedonia. So how do you see that process? Can we encourage those member states, those countries to deliver and actually contribute to the common security? Thank you.
Thank you. Then to conclude this first round of questions, I have a question in particular to Tilman Kuban. Today we are focusing here in Vienna very much on the Western Balkans, plus Ukraine and Moldova. These are the enlargement countries. But you already mentioned there's also something happening in our northern neighborhood. I know that you traveled to Iceland. Perhaps you could also share some impressions what happened in Iceland and how you might predict the outcome of the referendum on the 29th of August, because one thing is clear, whatever happens in Iceland could indeed also have an impact on the debate in Norway and also on the debate in Greenland. So I would suggest that we, of course, kick off first with the lady on the panel. So you can pick the local level, Paul Rubik's comments on public finances and pensions, or the question of funding by Andrei Novakov.
I can start with regional, I guess. I think this is a really interesting question because the regional approach means that it has to be it means that the enlargement is something that it cannot be decided top down. It also has to be bottom up, and that includes regions, as it's true in many circumstances. So I think from our perspective, in some countries this topic is easier than others. The experience that I've had visiting the countries of the enlargement that I've had is that this is really a whole society quest. Quest makes it look like they're fighting, but they are. It is a fight, and they are doing very, very, very strong efforts. And you can see that when you look and you talk with mayors of cities. I was, for instance, in Lviv several times now over the last 2 years, and there is no one more excited about the EU than Mayor of Lviv, which you would be sometimes surprised to hear. So I think you're completely right. It's a whole society approach, and I'm pretty sure that not all regions are so aware as others. But the experience that I've had is that it is truly something that comes from the bottom up in those countries that I've been to. So even if it is only for that, I think they do deserve for us to help them. And the last thing to say is that we already have at our disposal, as member states, it's a question of EU, but it's also an issue of member states. We have at our disposal means to be closer to regions and to cities by also bottom up in our own member states, by looking at cities that are cities in candidate countries and using the tools that we have in terms of twinning, in terms of support that we can give each other. So I would recommend those of us that are government or that are governing regions at some level to look into that, because I think it is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ines. Meneer Krul, what is your comment?
Well, I think one of the great flaws of my generation is that we do not invest enough when it comes to knowledge into our pensions, so I'll leave that question for someone else, if that's okay. It's a very interesting point. I think in general, when we look at the Western Balkan countries and the geopolitically gray zone that they are in, and the fact that we as European, as member states, quite often take the approach, well, let them show what they're worth, let them meet our standards, and when they get through it, they will be accepted. But we need to show the local population quite early on what's in it for them. And I think, and Tilman made that remark as well, when you look at a gradual accession, that could be an answer. That when you look at the local politicians, at the mayors, at the governors, that they can show their own, people quite early on what EU delivers to them. Because if we do not, that they will be looking at other countries, at other players, geopolitical players, that also come with certain benefits. So I think it's a very good remark. We should invest much more into showing what EU can do for the common man or the common lady, as was also in the remarks by Mr. Schüssel. So I think that is a clear assignment for us all, and it's one I will be taking back to Dutch Parliament as well.
Right, thank you. Tilman.
Yeah, just let me add one thing on the way towards Europe and the role of the municipalities and mayors, because from my perspective, pro-European movement can't be built on the federal level. It must be grassroots. So you have the support from the municipality level, from the municipality councils, also from the mayors and from the districts. Then you can build up a very, very strong movement all over the country, and not only in the capital. But maybe let me answer your questions on Iceland. As you said, I visited the country, and over there we see true friends of Europe. But from my perspective, we need more political commitment. We need more political commitment from the government, but also from our EPP friends over there. We've seen it in Moldova. There was a referendum as well. And because of the political commitment of Maia Sandu and the pass, it was possible to win this referendum. So if we don't have it till August, I see that there are also others around. The No campaign is supported by Nigel Farage and his team. We haven't talked about Russian disinformation campaign yet, so let's see what will happen over there. But I would highly recommend to take more political responsibility, but also commitment in the further months.
Right, thank you. I think this was very valuable because not all of us are aware that there will be this referendum on the 29th of August in Iceland, a member state already of the European Economic Zone and in Schengen. And now, Mr. Cedimajic, what would you like to say on the 3 questions from the audience?
I would like to point to something interesting for me, and that is when we discuss about Iceland or Norway joining the European Union, no one is actually discussing about transitional periods, voting rights, etc. And I think the reason is that the image of these 2 countries is that if they would join the EU, they would actually contribute and have something to add to the European Union. So I think for me the question is, when we think about the Western Balkans and Moldova and Ukraine, is how can we break the lack of imagination of thinking of these countries in a way that they can actually contribute to the EU. Security was mentioned as one of the issues. I mean, Ukraine 4 years ago was considered as a country where we need to send weapons, where we need to provide support. In the past 4 years, it has emerged as a country which we now see completely differently. 60% of weapons are being produced there. We see it as important for our own European security, and the imagination from 4 years ago has completely shifted. I think in economic terms and in development terms, also Ukraine, but also Western Balkan countries and Moldova can also change in that way. When it comes to the participation of the regional level, I would say it's probably the case is probably, as you described it, in countries that are not engaging seriously in the accession process, or where the EU has not been engaging seriously with them. Because accession process, as our Croatian colleagues here know, is not a process for one person, for a prime minister or a president or his closest team. It is a process for thousands of people that need to stay longer in their working hours, that need to do more, not because they will get a bigger salary or the promotion, but because they believe that they're doing something that fundamentally transforms their country and their society. So I think there is a place for the local levels. There is a place for regional levels in countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is highly federalized and decentralized. Of course, there is a place for them. But for that to really happen and to see it on the ground, you need to have the process that the country believes in, that the EU wants to lead with.
Right.
And I just add one thing.
Tilma.
The referendum in Iceland is about to start negotiations.
Yes.
It is not a referendum of entering the European Union. So I think we need to be clear in that case. So it is to start negotiations, and yes, because of market issues, they are quite in favor of nearly having all the standards of the European Union. That is why it will be a bit easier than in other regions to enter the European Union, but I think we need to be clear that it is a referendum to start negotiations, not a referendum to enter the European Union.
And in that sense, this proposal of the EEA plus kind of from Chancellor Merz and President Macron, but also from the Chancellor Schüssel, is interesting because it would allow these countries to really change and become attractive for the membership.
Okay, so on the 29th of August, the Icelanders will decide about the resumption of the accession negotiations, which was stalled in 2015.
There's a question from Norway.
Now, we have 5 more minutes left. I'll do a second round. Who was first? I see over there. If I can identify your flag, you are from Norway. Congratulations, you're doing very well at the Football World Cup. So,
Thank you. We will all be rowing tonight, I guess. Since Norway and Iceland was mentioned, I thought it was good to say just a couple of words. I'm an MP from Høyre, the Norwegian Conservative Party. And I think the reason why Norway and Iceland is mentioned in a different manner when it comes to, or compared to other countries, when it comes to accession, is because of the EEA agreement. It is an agreement where we are, in effect, paying non-voting members. It's the amount of regulations that we have to take in means that we are already at a very high threshold when it comes to meeting the requirements of a full membership, which is why an EEA agreement or an EEA plus agreement as a waiting room for those countries who have a high stretch in terms of meeting the EU requirements will not work. Because once you meet the EEA target, you might as well join. That's why the discussion is different with Norway and Iceland, because we already take about 90% of the rules and regulations from the EU anyway. So that's also why I think in the resolution that we're going to discuss later on, the amendment proposed where the Norwegian model is one of the, is mentioned as an option, as a waiting room. I think we need to vote against that because it's not going to work in practice. And I don't think the countries who are waiting for a membership would want to join a system where we have such a huge democratic deficit. And rest assured, my party wants Norway to join the EU. And if Iceland joins, that may create a new momentum. But the referendum in August to restart their negotiations is not going to change the debate in Norway. And to be honest, we need to start losing in football before we can enter the EU, because now the national pride is too high. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question from our friend from TS Elkide.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we discussed a lot about deepening of integration in economy before entering. Honestly, I don't believe it too much, because I think we have to take into account political goals and full membership, not to create kind of second-class citizenship, because China and Russia might get under the skin. But my question to you, what about deepening on defense? What about creating kind of defense Schengen, using the best experience Ukrainians are bringing us now and solving many other issues we have on this globe, not only on Eastern fronts?
Thank you. And the third and final question is over there, the gentleman.
Thanks very much, Barry Ward from Ireland. We're looking forward to taking over the presidency on Wednesday, and Ireland's support for enlargement is huge. We've been very involved in enlargement in the past, including many of the negotiations to reunify Germany in 1990, David. My question for the panel really relates to the parliamentary dimension of the approval of the agreement that's made by the Commission. I have every confidence that there is widespread support, but are there parliaments where you doubt that there will be approval for the agreement struck by the Commission in terms of enlargement of any country in the future?
Right, thank you. 3 excellent questions from Norway, Lithuania, and Ireland. And I now go back to the panel. Anytime the Austrian Chancellor will enter, then we have to, of course, pay respect and end. So, brief answers first. Ines, Madam Minister.
I'll be very brief. Just to talk about EEA agreements, I completely agree with the Norwegian speakers. Once you are inside, you basically have to pay to be inside the internal market, which is fine because the internal market is great and you should pay to be inside it. But the truth is that it seriously makes a lot of sense, particularly nowadays, to get over the finishing line. So I fully agree with you, and that gives a lesson also to current candidates, which is, and I don't think it's a lesson because I know they perceive it well, but it's perhaps a lesson to us that ultimately the goal is to be a member state. That is what makes, if I'm going to be very economicist to a point, I would say the most cost-effective option. What makes sense is to be a member of the European Union, and if you consider also the challenges that go beyond economic aspects of it, it makes even more sense. So I fully agree with that. This is not to say that we cannot have means to getting there, or we cannot have gradual integration, which we do in many things. But I fully agree with the Norwegian colleagues' observation. Thank you.
Thank you. Harm?
Yeah, I would just like to say I completely agree with this statement. We went from a period after the Cold War where it was war by choice. We could quite frankly choose the conflicts we would interfere in. And we are now in a period where it's war by necessity. And I've visited Lithuania twice when I was in service. And they knew, the Baltic states, they knew quite early on that this was an existential threat. And I don't think integrating command structures defense-wise on the European level is wise, but integrating capabilities is very important. And I know very well what it is like now in Estonia and Lithuania. And I think it's a great example of how you can integrate certain command structures there NATO-wise, and it's very good what we are doing over there.
Thank you. Do you want to add one point on the national parliaments? The Dutch Tweede Kamer?
The Dutch Tweede Kamer?
Are you on board?
We are on board, yes, but I must say we are in a minority coalition at the moment, so it's not enough to say we are on board.
But you're a strong part of the...
Okay. Tillmann, is the German Bundestag on board?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And let me add one thing to the friend from Horde. We truly support you on your way, not only in the EPP family, but also towards Europe, because we know you are an absolutely reliable partner, and I can totally underline what you said, that the EAA is maybe a different group. It's a group where we fulfill nearly all the criteria, where we have, that is why you have these access towards the market, but we also want you in our political family, so please move on. And that is why I would also like to underline that we as a German government are staying on the track towards gradual integration, because there are different steps to go. And if you fulfill criteria in one market, you can enter the market. But if there are different markets, let's talk about agriculture or other things, then we need to talk about how to have also the same level playing field in Europe. That is why, from our perspective, full membership must be different towards the membership integration or membership light. I know that not everybody is in favor of this, but a step before that. But we want to have an easier access towards the European Union. That is why we are trying to push it. And to come to your point of the defense sector, I truly support, or we truly support you, that we need a defense Schengen, and we need to deepen also the military cooperation. We have a few things to discuss with our friends from France, but I think there are a lot of other projects where we can even cooperate more, and therefore we need this European cooperation to also make clear that we are a strong player in the defense sector in the world.
Thank you. And finally, Adnan?
Yes, I don't know what the exact wording of the amendment is, but I want to clarify one thing. I don't think Chancellor Merz and President Macron were arguing for these countries to join the EEA or for it to be a substitute for the full membership. How I understood it is simply with Montenegro, we are negotiating, we are writing a treaty. If it's like Croatia, once the treaty is signed, their parliamentarians will join the European Parliament as observer, council ministers will join. And the argument is, why not also on the legal basis that was done for San Marino and Andorra, also start applying single market rules so that citizens and businesses can feel the benefits immediately after the signing of the treaty. So by the time ratification or whatever happens with the ratification, that this country, as a result of the reforms, as a reward for the reforms, gets these benefits until this political. Because then the pressure, what I said was what Mr. Schäuble said, all or nothing brings us nowhere or brings us not very far, would be diffused. Pressure would be weaker, but the process would be able to continue. And then if that is a successful model with Montenegro, it could also then be applied to the other countries. But again, to clarify, in order for them to join the single market, enjoy four freedoms, they need rule of law, they need democracy, they need all EU standards to apply, and it cannot be a substitute for the EU membership. It needs to be something where they would be able to do and would be able then to show in the ratification process to the EU member states, look, we're already in, we're doing it, our courts are enforcing the rules, our businesses can work inside the single market. So there is no fear for you to potentially ratify the treaty. And then I said, in other countries, it diffuses this pressure. Look at Montenegro, they're doing everything, but in the end, they might lose also everything. For me, from my point of view, that is the case. I don't know how the amendment looks like, but if it's in that direction, I would encourage you to support it over very much, because it would be good for the candidates.
Thank you. Now, later in the afternoon, we will continue the debates and discussions around the EU's enlargement policy on the second panel, then chaired by our Vice President, Andrzej Halicki. I would like to thank the participants of our panel, Ines, Harman, Tillman, and Adnan, for their contributions. Let's give a show of hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, because I'm a German and I was told to conclude on 5:15, it's already 5:20. We are 5 minutes out of schedule. This is a drama, at least for Germans. I hand over to Dolores Montserrat to carry us through the agenda until the Chancellor of Austria comes. Thank you very much. Obrigado. Danke, Tillmann. Dank u wel. Hvala puno. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you to David McAllister, because you moderate amazingly, and thank you to all the experts and the panelists, to Ines, to Harman, to Tillman, and to Adnan, but of course to our former Chancellor Schüssel for your speech and keynote. It was very interesting, this roundtable about enlargement. Now we have our Chancellor here, Christian Stocker, and thank you so much to be here. And I want to say on behalf of all EPP, thank you to all your team that that they welcome us so much, well here in Vienna, and we know that tonight we are going to enjoy a very nice place dinner. So thank you so much how you are implementing all the reforms here in Austria and how you are doing here in Austria. You are our mirror where we have to look for all the rest of the countries that we don't still are in the government. So you are our hope to achieve the rest of the European Union member states that we are not yet in the government. You are our mirror where we can look it. So now I'm giving the floor to President Manfred, and then you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Ja, liebe Dolores, zunächst, lieber David, herzlichen Dank für das Panel. Ihr erlaubt mir jetzt in Deutsch weiterzumachen. Bitte die Übersetzungsmöglichkeiten zu nutzen, weil ich hier das Privileg habe, wenn ich jetzt in Wien sprechen darf, dass ich nicht nur in meiner Muttersprache sprechen darf, sondern sogar fast in meinem Dialekt sprechen darf als Bayer, weil man mich hier in Österreich dann sogar gut versteht. Deswegen umso mehr ein herzliches Willkommen. Und es ist uns jetzt eine große Freude, die Dolores hat es bereits gesagt, dass wir den Kanzler der Republik Österreich in unseren Reihen willkommen heißen dürfen, den Vorsitzenden dieses starken EVP-Pfeilers, nämlich der ÖVP hier in Österreich, Christian Stocker. Ein herzliches Willkommen in der EVP-Familie. Wenn wir hier in Wien sind, dann möchte ich zunächst unterstreichen, wie wertvoll der Beitrag der ÖVP für uns ist als Europäische Volkspartei, eine Partei, die lange Tradition hat, die ein starker Pfeiler unserer politischen Bewegung ist, die Brückenbauer ist, qua Definition auch über die regionalen politischen Fragen hinweg und die Führung zeigt, gerade mit dem Hauptthema dieser Political Assembly bei der Erweiterungsfrage, Führung zeigt, Österreich und Wien uns Orientierung gibt. Auch ich möchte genauso wie die Dolores das gemacht haben, deinem Team herzlichen Dank sagen. An der Spitze natürlich der ÖVP-Vizepräsident der Europäischen Volkspartei, nämlich Magnus Brunner, auch als starker Kommissar am Tisch in Brüssel, der starke Stimme hat. Ich möchte herzlich Danke sagen an die Kollegen im Europäischen Parlament, Reinhold, der die Delegation führt, alle Freunde, die da mit Verantwortung tragen. Ein herzliches Dankeschön auf das Team. Lieber Christian, kannst du dich verlassen? Sie erinnern uns an die österreichischen Interessen und bringen sie auch und setzen sie auch durch. Und ich möchte auch für die Partei nochmal Danke sagen. Die Sophia ist als JEP-Vorsitzende einer unserer starken Stimmen der jungen Generation, als ÖVP-Vertreterin in einer führenden Rolle, gerade für die Zukunft der Europäischen Volkspartei. Sophia, herzlichen Dank für deine Arbeit. Du siehst, dass wir hier eine starke... Du spürst und siehst, dass du ein starkes Team hast, das österreichische ÖVP-Interessen in Europa einbringt, auf das du sehr, sehr stolz sein kannst. Und ich möchte zum Überführen in deine Worte dir persönlich danken, weil deinen Stil, wie du heute Bürgerlichkeit, Christdemokratie im guten Sinne verkörperst, nämlich die Themen adressieren, die Probleme beantworten, ernsthaft hart arbeiten, um die Probleme unserer Zeit zu beantworten und Orientierung zu geben, die Bilder von morgen aufzubauen, in welche Welt wir gehen wollen. Das ist das, was du verkörperst als heutiger Kanzler und ÖVP-Vorsitzender. Dafür danke ich dir. Du bist ein Vorbild für das, was wir in der EVP brauchen, diese Orientierung zu geben, in durchaus herausfordernden Zeiten, in denen wir uns befinden. Herzlichen Dank fürs Dasein und du hast jetzt das Rednerpult.
So Donald Trump always says the United States are the hottest country in the world. You see, Austria is hotter. So, dear President of the European People's Party, dear Manfred, dear Vice President Šuica, dear Dubravka, dear Vice President Brunner, dear Magnus, dear Secretary General, dear Dolores, dear Chancellor, dear Wolfgang, dear Secretary General Nico, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all here in Vienna for the EPP Political Assembly. Vienna is the right place to discuss the future of Europe, not least because of its geography and its history. Our meeting today is taking place at the heart of our continent. It is a place where East and West, North and South come together. Austria has always seen itself as a bridge between Europe's different regions. Vienna is a city that has experienced profound change throughout its history. And today, we are once again living through a period of profound change. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, now in its fifth year, conflict in the Middle East, unstable trade routes, a US administration that is moving even further away from Europe, and an increasingly assertive China. Allow me for the following words to switch to German. I took the privilege, like Manfred. Manche wünschen sich in dieser Situation die Vergangenheit zurück, weil es so einfach scheint. Frieden in der Ukraine, eine vollständige Öffnung der Straße von Hormuz, alles wird wieder, wie es war. Wer den Lauf der Geschichte kennt, der weiß aber, dass das ein trügerischer Irrglaube ist. Die Welt bewegt sich nie zurück, sie bewegt sich immer nur nach vorne. Die Jahre 1990 bis 2020 waren ein Geschenk für uns hier in Europa und ganz besonders für uns hier in Österreich. Eine Phase, in der wir Frieden als selbstverständlich angenommen haben. Eine Zeit, in der Wohlstand gewachsen ist wie nie zuvor. Ein Gefühl, dass es in der Welt nur mehr Demokratien geben soll und geben wird. Leider ist diese Phase vorbei. Das ist die unangenehme Wahrheit. Und dieser Wahrheit kann man nur mit klarem Blick und kühlem Kopf begegnen. Der größte Fehler, den man machen kann, ist die Gegenwart nicht wahrhaben zu wollen und in der Vergangenheit zu verweilen. Europa darf diesen Fehler nicht machen. Wir als EPP dürfen diesen Fehler nicht machen. Die Europäische Union steht heute ebenfalls vor enormen Herausforderungen. Wann immer ich meine Kollegen im Europäischen Rat sehe, habe ich den Eindruck, dass die Liste der Herausforderungen länger wird und nicht kürzer. Wann immer ich in Brüssel bin, wird mir eines auch jedes Mal von Neuem klar. Die Mitgliedschaft Österreichs in der Europäischen Union ist gerade heute wichtiger denn je. Und ich bin überzeugt, das gilt nicht nur für Österreich, das gilt für alle 27 Mitgliedstaaten. Paul-Henri Spaak, ein Gründervater der Europäischen Union, hat einmal gesagt, in Europa gibt es nur zwei Typen von Staaten. Kleine Staaten und Staaten, die noch nicht verstanden haben, dass sie klein sind. Noch nie hat dieser Satz so viel Wahrheit gehabt wie heute. Nur der Verbund in einer gemeinsamen Europäischen Union schützt uns. Nur die Europäische Union macht uns gemeinsam stark. Wir alle kritisieren die EU gerne. Jeder von uns erwartet sich immer mehr. Aber wenn uns eines als Zeichen dienen soll, wie wertvoll es ist, in dieser Gemeinschaft zu sein, dann ist es der Blick auf die Beitrittskandidaten. So viele Menschen in Europa wünschen sich, dass ihre Länder auch eines Tages Teil dieser Union sein dürfen. Von Kiew bis Skopje, von Podgorica bis nach Chisinau. Und selbst in London hat man den Eindruck, dass der eine oder andere wieder sehnsüchtig über den Ärmelkanal blickt. Wir, die Teil der Europäischen Union sind, nehmen die Mitgliedschaft für selbstverständlich. Wir nehmen die Vorteile, die sie bringt, für selbstverständlich. Und dabei vergessen wir, dass die EU ein Versprechen ist, Ein Versprechen für Frieden, für Wohlstand, für Rechtsstaatlichkeit und für Demokratie. Uns wurde dieses Versprechen erfüllt. Nun liegt es aber genauso an uns, auch selber Wort zu halten. Und liebe Freunde, darum geht es, wenn wir heute über die Zukunft der Erweiterung sprechen. Die Frage der Erweiterung ist keine technische Nebendebatte, ganz im Gegenteil. Sie betrifft die zukünftige Gestalt Europas. Sie betrifft unsere Sicherheit, unsere wirtschaftliche Stärke und sie betrifft vor allem auch unsere Glaubwürdigkeit als Europäische Union. Als österreichischer Bundeskanzler, aber auch als Bundesparteiobmann der Österreichischen Volkspartei ist mir daher wichtig, dass wir diese Political Assembly für eine klare Botschaft nutzen. Europa muss sein Versprechen gegenüber seinen Beitrittskandidaten einhalten. Und unsere politische Familie muss dabei eine treibende Kraft sein. Und gerade deshalb bin ich froh, dass die Political Assembly in Wien genau dieses Thema in den Mittelpunkt stellt. Vor wenigen Wochen war ich beim EU-Westbalkan-Gipfel in Tivat. Dass dieses Treffen in Montenegro stattgefunden hat, hatte eine große symbolische Bedeutung für Montenegro, aber für die gesamte Region auch. Mein Eindruck nach diesem Gipfel war klar. Die Dynamik des Erweiterungsprozesses hat sich zuletzt wieder deutlich verbessert. Das ist positiv und wir müssen diese Dynamik nutzen. Österreich sieht sich, wie ihr alle wisst, immer als besonders großer Fürsprecher der Länder des Westbalkans. Schon vor mehr als 20 Jahren wurde unter österreichischem EU-Ratsvorsitz mit der Salzburger Erklärung die europäische Perspektive des Westbalkans klar bekräftigt. Lieber Wolfgang, du hast damals als Bundeskanzler ganz entschieden dazu beigetragen, dieses europäische Versprechen festzuschreiben. Und ich danke dir, dass du auch heute deine Erfahrung und deine Überzeugung in diese Debatte einbringst. Die Grundidee von damals ist unverändert. Die Zukunft der Staaten des Westbalkans liegt in der Europäischen Union. Du selbst warst gemeinsam mit Ursula Plasnik entscheidend dafür verantwortlich, dass Kroatien der Europäischen Union beigetreten ist. Aber Kroatien ist bis heute das letzte Land, das beigetreten ist. Und es ist Zeit für den nächsten Beitritt aus der Region. Die besten Chancen dafür hat Montenegro. Montenegro hat sich auch ein ambitioniertes Ziel gesetzt. Es möchte die Verhandlungen möglichst rasch abschließen, das 28. Mitgliedsland im Jahr 2028. Aber die letzten Meter, das wissen wir alle, sind oft die schwersten. Aber ich sage hier auch ganz klar, wenn Montenegro die Bedingungen erfüllt, muss die Europäische Union den nächsten Schritt auch ermöglichen. Und es ist mir auch persönlich und politisch eine besondere Freude, dass wir als Europäische Volkspartei morgen die Partei von Premierminister Mikis Bajic aufnehmen werden. Albanien befindet sich ebenfalls auf einem guten Weg und ich freue mich auch, dass eine Delegation aus Albanien an dieser Assembly teilnimmt. Die Demokratische Partei Albaniens ist ein starker Partner der EPP. Österreich unterstützt beide Länder, Montenegro und Albanien mit voller Kraft, aber unser Engagement gilt darüber hinaus der gesamten Region. Nordmazedonien ist seit vielen Jahren klar europäisch orientiert und wartet bereits zu lange auf weitere konkrete Fortschritte. Bosnien und Herzegowina brauchen stabile und handlungsfähige Institutionen sowie die konsequente Umsetzung der notwendigen Reformen. Und wir alle wissen, dass auch Serbien ein zentraler Staat in dieser Region ist. Und für den Kosovo gilt es ebenfalls, eine glaubwürdige europäische Perspektive zu entwickeln. Und das setzt voraus, dass alle die Bereitschaft haben, zusammenzuarbeiten, Kompromisse zu finden und bei den Beitrittskandidaten Reformen umzusetzen. Und natürlich unterstützen wir auch die Ukraine und Moldau in diesem Beitrittsprozess. Und ich freue mich, dass bei beiden Ländern im Juni Cluster 1 geöffnet werden konnte. Aber jetzt gilt es, diese umfangreichen Reformen auch tatsächlich anzugehen. die der Erweiterungsprozess von den Kandidatenländern erwartet. Und erlauben Sie mir ein paar Sätze zum Erweiterungsprozess. Ich halte es für enorm wichtig, dass dieser Prozess glaubwürdig, transparent und leistungsbasiert bleibt. Das heißt, dass alle Kandidaten die gleichen Bedingungen haben müssen. Es darf keine politischen Abkürzungen geben und es darf keine künstlichen Verzögerungen geben. Der Erweiterungsprozess ist zweifellos nicht einfach und auch nicht kurz. Daher ist es wichtig, den Beitrittskandidaten schon auf den Weg zum Vollbeitritt Vorteile anzubieten, und zwar mehr, als bisher der Fall war. Das ist auch das Ziel der graduellen Integration. Wer auf dem Weg in die Europäische Union Reformen umsetzt, soll spürbare Vorteile erlangen. Und wir sehen hier auch konkrete Erfolge, wenn ich daran denke, dass Albanien, Montenegro und Nordmazedonien zwischenzeitlich, auch Serbien, Teil des einheitlichen Euro-Zahlungsverkehrsraums SEPA sind. Als nächster Schritt muss die Ausweitung des europäischen Roamings auf den Westbalkan zügig umgesetzt werden. Mehr als 500.000 Menschen in Österreich haben Wurzeln und Familien am Westbalkan. Für viele von ihnen wird Kommunikation dadurch einfacher, aber vor allem auch günstiger. Diese graduelle Integration darf aber nicht bei SEPA und Roaming enden. Wir sollten die Kandidatenländer stärker in einzelne Bereiche des Binnenmarktes, in europäische Programme, in europäische Agenturen einbinden. Es erweitert unseren Binnenmarkt, es erhöht die wirtschaftliche und geopolitische Bedeutung Europas. Es ist eine klassische Win-Win-Situation. Liebe Freunde, an dieser Stelle möchte ich auch ganz bewusst als Bundesparteiobmann der Österreichischen Volkspartei sprechen. Die Erweiterung ist nicht nur ein Projekt von Regierungen und europäischen Institutionen. Sie braucht starke und verantwortungsvolle europäische Parteien. Sie braucht Politikerinnen und Politiker, die Reformen nicht nur in Brüssel versprechen, sondern in ihren Ländern auch umsetzen und gegenüber der Bevölkerung vertreten. Und sie braucht eine politische Familie, die ihre Partner auf diesem Weg unterstützt. Die Europäische Volkspartei hat alle entscheidenden Etappen der europäischen Integration mitgestaltet. Und unsere Parteien stehen heute in vielen Kandidatenländern an der Spitze des europäischen Reformprozesses. Wir stehen für ein Europa, das seine Bürgerinnen und Bürger schützt und gleichzeitig offen für jene europäischen Staaten bleibt, die unsere Werte teilen und die notwendigen Voraussetzungen erfüllen. Unsere Schwester- und Partnerparteien in den Kandidatenländern leisten dabei entscheidende Arbeit. Aber sie brauchen unsere Verbundenheit. Sie brauchen vor allem eine glaubwürdige europäische Perspektive. Als größte politische Familie Europas müssen wir daher auch politische Führung übernehmen. Wir dürfen den Erweiterungsprozess nicht nur verwalten, wir müssen ihn gestalten. Die Erweiterung nach Mittel- und Osteuropa hat unseren Kontinent nach Jahrzehnten der Teilung wieder zusammengeführt. Die nächste Erweiterungsrunde muss diese Erfolgsgeschichte fortsetzen. Now I will switch back to English. Today here in Vienna we are sending a strong signal. But this political assembly is only one step along the way. Our work must continue tomorrow and in the months ahead with the same commitment. Austria is and will remain a firm supporter of the European perspective of the Western Balkans, Ukraine and Moldova. We will continue to advocate for a reliable, credible and merit-based enlargement process. We will support Montenegro and Albania for the final stages of their path towards the European Union, and we will also support PES Montenegro tomorrow morning. We will work to ensure that the entire region can achieve tangible progress. We will also continue to make one thing clear. Enlargement is not a gift to others. It is an investment in our own security, our own prosperity, in our shared European future. Let us therefore seize the new momentum. Let us keep our promises and let us turn the European perspective into a concrete European reality. Dear Manfred, dear Dolores, thank you for bringing the EPP Political Assembly to Vienna and thank you for addressing this central topic. Again, a very warm welcome to all of you in Vienna. I look forward to having good conversations in the evening at the Heuriger. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor, and I'm sure that tonight we are going to follow all our discussions this afternoon here in this political assembly. Now, we're going to go to the second panel today, the second panel and the last one panel, not discussion, but yes panel. So now it's European Union enlargement from commitment to readiness in candidate countries. So the session is going to be chaired by our Vice President, Andrej Halicki. So let's take the stage. Then Ivana Klimpush, Chair of the European Union Integration Committee in Ukraine Parliament, former Prime Minister for European Union Integration. Borjana Christo, Chairwoman of the Council of Ministers of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And Stefan Andonovsky, Minister of Digital Transformation, Republic of North Macedonia. So welcome, all of you. And now Halicki is taking the chair. Thank you so much.
Welcome to our second panel, dear Chancellor, dear Manfred, dear Dolores. Well, my first impression is that there are so many happy men at the venue sitting without jackets now, but we have to survive. We have still 1 hour, and we will have very interesting discussion on enlargement in practice. But first I would like to share with you my first nostalgic impression, because I am from Poland. And I have to tell you that in the 80s, when I was a member of anti-communist underground, we had very radical students' organization. I was one of the leaders. And I had a private slogan used in my economic university, not to having the choice wherever students are more on left side or more on right side. So it was no to the left, no to the right, but directly to Europe. And then we had some points which been also part of our manifesto in the end of 80s. And my colleague said, Andrzej, you are too radical to emphasize this European approach, because we are fighting for freedom of speech, freedom of gathering, freedom of association, and it is achievable. But being a part of the West Europe, well, it's too radical. And then I said, because one of the points was also to have a passport at home, I said, yes, it is too radical. So I said, withdraw this paragraph. And in the end, what I would like to tell you, determination and the consequences, the most important thing. No any limits, no any, self-limitation. We have to fight for the most ambitious projects, then we can achieve it. And starting this panel, I would like to invite you to the video from Chisinau. President Maia Sandu has the floor.
Dear President Manfred Weber, dear friends in the European People's Party, I am sorry I cannot be with you in Vienna, but I am grateful for the chance to address you still, because few partners have stood with Moldova as steadily as the EPP. You were with us when our European path was still a hope rather than a plan. You spoke for Moldova in the European Parliament. You backed our reforms when they were difficult. You treated our young democracy as part of your own family. We have not forgotten this, and today I want to thank you for it. So allow me to tell you where our work and your support have brought us. 2 weeks ago in Luxembourg, Moldova opened the first cluster of its accession negotiations, the cluster on fundamental values, rule of law, democracy, fundamental rights. A week ago in Brussels, at the EU-Moldova summit, the European Council and the Commission confirmed it again. Moldova is ready to open every remaining cluster. Now, the member states need to act, and acting means honoring how the process works. Enlargement is not a queue. It is not first come, first served. It is not a contest between candidates. It is built on merit. Each country advances at its own pace, through its own work. This is the fairest way. It is also the strongest. When a country earns its place, the result holds, and Europe grows more stable and more secure for the new members and for the current ones alike. Moldova has earned its progress. We won our energy security after 30 years of reliance on a single supplier. We connected our grid to Europe. We protected our elections. We're vetting our judges and our prosecutors, and our courts are convicting in cases that once seemed untouchable. Citizens' trust in justice is rising. We're doing all of this while facing a hybrid war, and we're standing firm. Our window of opportunity is open now, but windows like this close. We intend to make the best of ours during this European Commission's mandate. So I turn to you again. Be Moldova's voice in your capitals, in your parliaments, and in the council where the decisions rest. Speak for merit when the vote is called. Help our democracy anchor itself in the European Union where it belongs. Moldova will strengthen the Union. A secure border on Europe's eastern edge. A partner that has learned to counter foreign interference, disinformation, cyber attacks, and dirty money from the front line. The resilience we built under pressure becomes Europe's strength too. Waiting has a cost. Where Europe hesitates, others move. The forces that wage hybrid war against us are working for this window to close. And we are a small country on the edge of Europe. For how long can we hold the line alone without the shelter of a larger, stronger family? A stable, democratic Moldova inside Europe is the better answer for us and for you. Moldova is doing its part. We count on our friends to do the same. Thank you.
Mulțumesc, Madam President. Thank you very much. So I have to introduce our speakers. First of all, on my right side, Ivana Klimpuszczynskadze, chair of the European Committee in Verkhovna Rada in Ukrainian Parliament, former Deputy Prime Minister for EU integration. On my right side, Stefan Andonovski, Minister of Digital Transformation now in the government of North Macedonia. On the left side, I would like to introduce Josip Brkic, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and our colleague from PAS Party, Mihai Popșoi, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Moldova. Starting with Ivana, I would like to emphasize that, first of all, because of course of the war and the situation, which is a kind of determination of you situation, we have to remember that this war has started much earlier than Russia's attack in 2022. First of all, we have to remember Euromaidan with the European flags, but even attack on Georgia in 2008. It was also against pro-European approach and expectation of the Georgian society, pro-European approach. So what is your expectation now when you have on one hand situation with the war, with the front, with real fight for your sovereignty and independence, with the technical negotiations which are needed to be implemented because of the goal of the full membership? What's your expectation? What's your first impression, what we should do together?
Well, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be speaking here today, and I'm very grateful that this political assembly is focusing on the enlargement. I think I'm very grateful, dear Mr. Galitsky, that you have mentioned that the war of Russian Federation against Ukraine did not start in 2022. It did start back in 2014, if not earlier, but the military part of it has started in 2014. And why I'm mentioning this, because we have to understand that Russia has been trying basically not only to ruin us and not only to exterminate us, but to deprive us of the very essential choice that people are making. It's a civilizational choice of people that we are fighting for. Yes, for our independence, yes, for our sovereignty, yes, for our territorial integrity, yes, for our right to exist, but at the same time also exist and develop the way we see it. So we back in Ukraine are very grateful that developments have been kind of more dynamized lately. And I think, well, Madam President has been saying about opening of the first cluster for Moldova. We are grateful that our Moldovan colleagues have been patient with one of the governments in Hungary in terms of stopping and vetoing for artificial reasons Ukraine's opening of the clusters, but did happen. You know, I have the history of working in European integration of Ukraine for about 20 years, when it was irrelevant, when it was impossible, when it was just fantastic dream. And now, thanks to all of you, thanks to your efforts, it is becoming a reality. So what do we expect? Well, first, we do expect that right now it doesn't only look serious, but it is serious. And that we are in this time when we can expect that we will open up the next chapters and next clusters. But at the same time, we do understand very well that right now in front of us, this is probably the biggest work that we have ever undertaken. Yes, we've done a lot. And by the way, all this discussion earlier here, we are hearing that, okay, there is such a revitalization of the enlargement readiness, supposedly, also for Western Balkans. But let me remind you that it all has happened only when European Union has woken up to understand that maybe this logic of geopolitical engagement and of geopolitical actions is necessary after Russia has started the full-scale invasion against Ukraine. So we are hoping right now that here with our friends, with our partners, we will be able to count on very honest conversation with regard to our accession. And that, you know, I believe that Chancellor Merz's initial suggestion was really a breakthrough in terms of thinking in different terms and trying to look how to anchor all of our countries while we are still going through the difficult period of reforms, and how to give us some interim benefits. But I really think that for all of us, it's critical that something that is seen right now or is being discussed as an interim benefit or interim arrangement would not be a substitute for the full-fledged membership. I think it's critical for all the countries. I think all of us do have this red line that this is not possible for us, you know, and we can then discuss, is it about more security, or is it more about more economic access, or is it about political presence without voting rights and so on. But I think that none of us would accept, and I think that you hopefully you would support us in that this is not a substitute. Anything is not a substitute for full-fledged membership. So our expectations right now is that there is a more serious magnifying lens of attention of our partners from the European Union to Ukraine and to, after opening the cluster, to the hard work that we have to deliver, attention and honesty in terms of what are the internal developments, how do we deal with our hiccups. Sorry to say, unfortunately, we have had a serious problem last summer. We do still have issues during the martial law. We do have issues with the freedom of the media. We do have issues with the pressure on the opposition, those illegal sanctions. We have problems with most successful reform of decentralization. Unfortunately, it has been crumbling at this point under the pressure of the so-called needed urgent decisions. But I hope that exactly, and that's our expectation, that exactly the European integration and this opening of the cluster and this prioritization of the rule of law, freedoms, democracy, market economy, even at the backdrop of this most brutal war that we are undergoing, is going to be our common work. And we are counting that you will be there with us, each step by step, because we are ready to take the rules and procedures of the EU, and we will implement them. And we are capable of doing this. But definitely we are not asking for some indulgence. We are just asking to be with us on this way and understand that we are doing this in the most unique circumstances, fighting the existential war. So that's why we do hope that we are getting additional guidance, additional support, additional advice that would help us to deal with those primary tasks of reforms.
We have not ready only to have the advice, but also with the practical mission. Budget committee mission will be in 2 weeks in Kiev to discuss the conditions of implementation of 90 billion of the loans. So this is in practice also very important and crucial for
very important. Well, if we are talking only about Ukraine, we can go in details. We can go on 90 billion, on part on the military, on part on the Ukraine facility, which I think was a great job, by the way, and we are grateful to European Commission. We from those parties that are really, really pro-European, we believe that it was useful to put the interim benchmarks on the fundamentals into Ukraine facility. I think it does create additional readiness and political will also on all the parties to actually carry out something that is not very easy, something that is, though, very important.
Coming to Stefan, I have some impression, also private one, because when I came back to politics again, after 2004, I came back to the Polish parliament in 2005. It was the moment after the package of enlargement, the big one, 10 countries, 10 societies, and also having that this is the part of the process which is expected in Europe, not finished by just very beginning. I was a member, or I was a chairman of the Polish North Macedonian, in that case, Macedonian Friendship Group. You started the negotiations in 2005. Don't you think that you missed the time, or you? How do you like to stick to the front runners? I mean, the leaders of this process.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. It is a challenge, and we started hating the word front runner. Just because of that, we signed the first ones from the Balkans, the Stabilization and Association Agreement in the year 2000. In the year 2005, together with Croatia, we became candidate members.
Yep.
And we haven't started negotiations in real life for the past 20 years. So frontrunner is always a tricky word for us. But first, let me start by commending the European People's Party for always keeping strategically important enlargement as a topic. Now it's becoming a trending issue in the past years, but it has been a topic within the EPP for all these years. And that's really, really true. And I dare to say that organizing this event as well is
bringing us to the forefront and to the table of discussions is truly important, because I think there are two sides of this coin. It's on one side the decision of the European People's Party and European Union to strategically use enlargement as a tool of being stronger, being more prosperous and opening up, and also on the side of the candidate countries to prosper and to transform themselves. And I think the question today is therefore not whether enlargement should happen or is necessary, more about whether Europe is prepared to match that strategic ambition with political decisions. And what we've seen in Tivat a couple of weeks ago is that there is readiness to do so. So there is readiness to match these political decisions. And for the perspective from a candidate country, readiness has also two dimensions. The first one is our responsibility. We started calling it our homework. And the second one is Europe's readiness to accept those countries that deliver on merit. We as a country have chosen to focus on reforms that produce measurable results. In my portfolio, digital transformation, I'm glad that it takes a large part of our transformation and the accession process in the country. And because I don't see digital transformation as technology about technology, I see it as about changing how the state operates, how the state functions. Because when a citizen no longer needs to carry documents from one institution to the other, because public registers don't communicate between themselves, then we reduce bureaucracy. And when public services become digital, administrative discretion is reduced and bureaucracy is reduced. And when every official action leaves a digital trace, accountability increases. And I don't see these as IT projects. They're more as reforms that strengthen rule of law, strengthen transparency, and make public administration more efficient. And as a government in the past 2 years, we have made these strategic moves. These are all-encompassing and transformative. Our e-services portal, for example, offers now more than 300 digital public services. Our interoperability platform connects more than 100 institutions. And we are introducing digital licenses, electronic document management system, digital identity, digital wallets, and whatnot. And every one of these reforms brings us closer to the European administrative model. And in this regard, it was very important for us to see the reform agenda and the growth plan introduced by the European Commission. And I'm happy that out of the 150 million euros that we secured for the country, almost 1/4 comes from reforms in the digital domain. And this reform and growth facility has reinforced our transformation processes within the country. Regionally also, it rewards countries that implement reforms. So are SEPA, as it was mentioned, the SEPA integration, and the forthcoming Rome like at home regime and initiative that I am leading in the country. But we should be careful not to confuse these instruments with the core objective that we have set before us, because these initiatives should prepare countries for membership and not replace membership. The greatest strength of the enlargement process has always been its credibility. If a country delivers on the reforms, then it moves forward. And that should be kept as a principle forward. And that will be a tool also for fostering European unity and power in the region. Candidate countries have obligations, for sure. We must continue reforming our judiciary, strengthening the rule of law, and fighting corruption. And we should be assessed rigorously, but also fairly, I would say. Because this brings me to my final point, what is fairness in this regard? I think the enlargement process should remain merit-based. It should not become vulnerable to bilateral disputes that have little or nothing to do with the Copenhagen criteria or the acquis. If reforms become secondary to these bilateral disagreements, we risk weakening the credibility of the entire enlargement methodology. And this will not be only a challenge for the candidate countries, it will become a challenge for the European Union itself. If we can all agree that all of us are European, from Ukraine to Ireland and from Cyprus to Finland, let's talk about victory in a world where winning is against us on all fronts. So instead of fighting among ourselves about 19th century notions, I want to think how a Macedonian, Greek, Bulgarian, Swedish startup would conquer the world in AI usage or quantum computing. And we have to admit that with blocking policies, we are actually blocking these kinds of partnerships, because we are not blocking China by these blockings into dominating in the chips, or we are not blocking by these internal blockages the US in dominating in AI. We are blocking ourselves, and we need a credible enlargement policy, because enlargement will remain Europe's most successful geopolitical instrument, and I would also say an economic instrument. And we as a country will continue to deliver on our reforms. We ask only that those reforms continue to be evaluated on their merits against European standards and through a process that is predictable, objective, and ultimately leads to membership. That is our core goal of our country and of the center-right government in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. So I have to turn to the left, and also we would like to stay in Western Balkans. Exactly 3 weeks ago, we had a summit, we had a Western Balkan conference. Josip was a participant of this conference. What are the most important challenges and what is your perspective? Is it possible to have bigger package from the Balkan states and societies in this process to have the final success?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me say that precisely our meeting in Sarajevo that had regional dimension and that had, also dimension for Bosnia and Herzegovina is a bright example how our political family is engaging within the candidate country and, being shoulder to shoulder with all of us who are there participating in the government or spearheading the reform processes within the Bosnia and Herzegovina or the region of the Western Balkans. President, thank you for the intention and initiative. It was really good and it was timely. Second of all, I must underline that we are in the country, that we are in the city who is also spearheading the group of countries, group of friends of the enlargement for the Western Balkans. Chancellor, together with his colleagues from Greece, from Croatia, from Italy, are the ones who are from the European Council supporting hugely this topic of the enlargement. Third point, the enlargement is being on the agenda, and I'm doing this work for the past 12 years as a deputy foreign minister, is due to the suffering of the Ukrainian people when Europe, took again a decision to see the enlargement as the strategic or geostrategic necessity of Europe. In case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, 2003 and Thessaloniki summit conclusions were the legal, I would say, and also political commitment of the European Union for the enlargement in this part of the world. Only Republic of Croatia 13 years ago managed that based on this commitment becomes the EU member country. And we know how much of the benefits the enlargement brings to the European Union countries and to the countries who are entering, because enlargement is the biggest investment in prosperity, stability, and I would also say for the prosperity of the wider Europe. My colleague, my homologue from Portugal said, we need Europe for Europeans. All of us who are not within the European Union, coming from the region of the Western Balkans, are no less Europeans by historical, cultural, social, or even religious background. We have to bridge this gap to become the part of the political Europe, the part of the European Union. Now, how it is possible? 10 years ago, or 10 and a half years ago, I was also part of the team that was convincing at that time Dutch presidency to accept application to the membership of Bosnia and Herzegovina to the EU. So that was 10 years ago. 2022, so that's already for some while, yes, we get the candidacy status in March 23, decision of the Council to open negotiations. From this position of someone who was promised political possibility to become member state of the EU, we are one step behind Moldova and Ukraine, which opened their negotiations chapters, and I'm congratulating on this, because we believe that European perspective of both of the countries is in common and mutual interest. can we all join together the European Union, as the idea that was floating around, if I'm not mistaken, last week mentioned by the Chancellor Merz as he was follow-up question about this phase integration. Everything can happen, because I believe that when there was a Big Bang 2004, that all 10 countries were not equally or, to one percentage prepared to enter into the European Union. If it's geostrategic for one, must be for all. If it is merit-based for one, must be for all. Shortcuts, I'm not the fan of them, because at the end of the day, or on the long run, this is the boomerang which is going to, hit you back. Chairwoman Kristo and the Council of Ministers and this parliamentary majority did the utmost. We had a good start, and after the first year, our President von der Leyen, said that it was done more in 1 year than in the previous 10. Internal gridlock and internal, I would say, political impasse in Bosnia and Herzegovina, broke us in this European path. So that's why we need this, strong support and strong commitment from the EPP family, from the member countries who are the group of friends, to help us walk this walk, as my colleague were saying eloquently, to walk this walk together and to come and to become part of the political Europe, because once again, we are no less Europeans than the rest of the European Union.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have not only hot summer, but also the world is unpredictable and the politics is very hot. So I feel that we have also a special momentum to have the decisions. And the special situation I would like to emphasize is in Moldova, because we had the message from Maia Sandu, the president. We've seen determination. Well, I'm really impressed by reforms, but it's also very difficult internal situation with Transnistria, with Russian disinformation. What do you think is the most important for us to know or for you to do? Mihai, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will first like to start by thanking our gracious hosts. Vienna and Austria has been historically a great place to discuss important international matters. But when it comes to enlargement, dare I propose an even better place to discuss it, a candidate country. And we would love to host a political assembly anytime next year, provided that the leadership, and I see here President Weber, who was recently in Moldova, we would love to welcome all of you next year, anytime, to the Republic of Moldova. Thank you, but just in case that I wasn't persuasive enough, we can do it in a wine cellar where the temperature is 15 degrees year-round.
Good.
Now, in all seriousness, when we talk about enlargement, there is always this difficult question of what one country or the other brings to the table. In the case of the Republic of Moldova, it's pretty obvious what Moldova brings to any table. It's wine, but other than wine, call me biased, but the Republic of Moldova has come a long way. 10 years ago, when we just created the party, and we were making our first steps, and we were relying on our great friend Elmar Brok, who is here with us, to help us navigate our first steps in politics, spending a lot of patience and a lot of resilience in helping us navigate some of the internal political debates and first challenges. But we have come a long way. The Republic of Moldova is now a country that is delivering on the reforms, a country that has been able to withstand repeated avalanches of Russian interference in our elections, with literally hundreds of millions of dollars pumped into our political system to bribe our citizens to vote against their best interest, to hijack our democracy. And the Kremlin failed time and time again. The Kremlin failed because Moldovans have shown remarkable resilience, unity, wisdom, but also the Kremlin failed because we've had incredible support from our first steps in politics to this day. We've had the support of EPP, as President Sandu mentioned. We had the support of every single member state, where an EPP party, small or big, has always been a strong supporter of Moldova's progress, but also for merit-based enlargement. And nowadays, if we look at last year's enlargement report, Moldova has made the biggest progress in 1 year compared to any of the candidate countries. We are very happy when we're seeing progress, when we're seeing credibility being delivered, as Ines mentioned. Credibility is very important in the enlargement process. That's why we're incredibly happy to see Montenegro advance, because if we see that one country advances, it means that the process is working. We are delivering on our end. We are making incredible strides when it comes to justice reform, coming from a very difficult circumstances when the country was ruled by an oligarch that was destroying Moldovan democracy and the future that the people were craving for. Well, now that oligarch is undergoing trial. This is a testament to the results of the vetting of the justice system. Of course, we're not out of the woods. There is a Court of Appeal ruling. The justice has to take its course. But Moldovans see real results. Moldovans also see real results when it comes to relationship with the European Union. The DCFTA, the Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Area, is paying off. The visa liberalization is paying off. The SEPA agreement, the Single European Payment Area, is paying off for individuals and for businesses. The Roam Like at Home, it was mentioned earlier here, amazing. I didn't imagine what a great impact it will have before it was introduced. But now, when I come to Vienna, when I come to any other EU member state, I no longer have this PTSD when I turn on roaming. And the accountants at the ministry don't have to worry about the bills. But this is savings in the pockets of every citizen and every business that brings Moldova and the other countries closer to the European Union. So, in these very difficult circumstances with the Russian aggression against Ukraine, where Moldova welcomed the largest number of refugees per capita, where the security situation is very difficult, but Moldova has also integrated itself into the European military logistics lines. Well, Moldova wants to deliver more from a security standpoint, because the EU has invested in us through the European Peace Facility, which has been the largest investment in our security and defense sector. We want to give back. We've already been doing our fair share, trying to help our friends in Armenia combat the hybrid Russian attacks. We've done our modest support, and we're very happy to see that Armenia was able to overcome this incredible challenge in their elections as well. We are incredibly happy, and it's really heartwarming for us when we see Moldovan flags on the streets of certain countries that will go unnamed, where it represents a symbol of hope, a symbol of resilience, and a symbol of victory against Russian pressure, Russian blackmail. And this has been done with your support. We would not have been able to do it without you, without Elmar that I mentioned earlier, without friends from the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, without our Swedish friends from Hjalmarsson Foundation, our friends from RSI, Gabor, he was somewhere here. You've been with us every step of the way. Now, we are only asking that the enlargement process remains as it was promised, merit-based, and for the goalpost not to be moved further away. We are delivering on our end. We are counting on the credibility of the process, that the European member states and European institutions will deliver on the promise that we agreed. And again, we're not asking for shortcuts. We're not asking for any favors. We want to be a full-fledged, equal member of the European Union, because not the least of all the other things that I mentioned, we have European passports in our pockets. More than half of Moldovans are full-fledged European citizens by virtue of having Romanian passports, Bulgarian passports. So we need to legalize the real estate, because most of the citizens are already full-fledged members. But we really want to contribute, and we are contributing, as President Sandu mentioned. In energy security, we're playing an important role. In combating hybrid threats, we're playing an important role. And we want to play an even more important role as we advance towards EU membership. So I cannot thank you enough for all the support that you've provided, for all the trust that you put 10 years ago and throughout these 10 years. And we would love to welcome you anytime that the President decides to Chisinau. for a political assembly in Moldova. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mihai, and I would like to say in our name that we would like to thank you because this is the best example of the determination, and after having so many campaigns in that circumstances, the 5 or 6 victories, this is something we have to learn from your side, how to fight with these external forces, with the Russian disinformation, with internal also, an illegal campaign, we can say. So I think that Manfred, we have the special team on that established in our headquarters. I think that we have to go not only for the bigger conventional meeting in Chisinau and in Cellars, but also to have a practice lesson how to fight against disinformation during campaign or even before, how to protect the citizens. Well, we have 20 minutes, I think, still for the questions. Yeah, Patrick confirms. So I would like to collect the questions from your side. Yes, Sean is the first, but if you would like to raise the hand, who would like to ask the question and take the floor? Sean, well, use the microphone because...
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Better.
Sean Kelly from Ireland. Everybody who spoke on both panels were very enthusiastic about enlargement. Chancellor Stoker said it was not a gift, it was more or less an obligation. It should be merit-based and no shortcuts. I'd agree with all that. But with enlargement comes some difficulties. The bigger the party, the harder it is to manage. And looking at the example of Hungary over the last 16 years and the chaos that the pompous puppet of Putin, Viktor Orbán, tried to create in utilizing the veto to his own advantage, should we not also be looking at the countries who want to come in and will fulfill all obligations, but nobody can guarantee what will happen if there's a change of government? So, should we be looking at lessons learned from Orbán, the veto, and particularly moving to qualified majority voting, and possibly provisional application or membership for a number of years? Because most of us, if we were taking on an employee, they would have a probationary period. And especially as once a country joins the EU, as of now, they cannot be removed. So, to protect the integrity and the future of the EU, should we also be looking at what needs to happen post-enlargement for the overall benefit of everybody, so that some country that might backslide would often, as we saw with Orbán, cause more chaos. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our President of Committee of Regions from EPP side, the floor is yours, from Finland.
Thank you so much, Sari Rautio, coming from Finland and Committee of the Regions, and
Committee
also
of Regions,
yes, and also the Vice President of EPP Women. Thank you so much for the great panel already so far. I truly agree that, and we truly agree that definitely enlargement is the utmost question of your security and also the competitiveness of all Europe. So I want to thank you for your work already. As was mentioned already in the previous panel, the role of multi-level governance and that is the cities and regions also along. We do a lot of work also in the local and regional level, and we are ready to deliver with all the candidate countries, of course, because that is truly important when it comes to democracy, when it comes to building up the rule of law and everything. And also I want to underline the role of EPP women, because we are working very much and a lot with, especially on Western Balkan, but everywhere elsewhere. So please don't forget us, and let's work together for this. Pardon me, I don't have a special question, but just to underline this, the importance. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And the question from Georgian side.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Tiana Lavrelashvili. I'm advisor of European Georgia. I also have a second head with the Wilfred Martin Center for European Studies as a research associate. Excellent panel discussions. My question is about the hybrid threats and the resilience that is so much also in the agenda of the European Union. Mihai Popsoy and of course also our guests mentioned the importance of fighting against hybrid threats. My question is, at this important moment when the European Union is developing a democracy shield, to what extent the candidate countries can also become parts of this initiative gradually to learn from the experiences of Moldova, Georgia, but also Ukraine. And second question to Mr. Popsoy, you did not mention Transnistria, which I believe also is important obstacle, but also an opportunity to tackle when it comes to European integration. So what is the tool of enlargement to address this conflict as a reintegration and peaceful negotiation as part of Moldova? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Because I can not see this question was addressed to Mihai. Probably we can start with the last one.
Sure. We have a situation within the European Union already where a part of a territory of a member state is not under effective control of that state. We understand that we may not necessarily count on the Cyprus precedent, but we appreciate enormously all member states and EU institutions keeping it on the table, because otherwise we would be carrying water for the Kremlin for them, because they would be in a position to effectively veto our accession process. So as long as the precedent is there, we know that we realistically cannot necessarily count on it. That's why we are working proactively to bring the Transnistrian region of the Republic of Moldova back into its constitutional space, because economically, we are one country. 80% of everything that is exported from the Transnistrian region of Moldova goes to the European market. The rest of Moldova, 70%. So the Transnistrian region is even more anchored onto the European market than the rest of the country. If we talk about football, we are one country, and you be the judge of that, whether it's good or bad, but Sheriff Tiraspol has been champion of Moldova for 20 years.
Sheriff.
And at one point even beat Real Madrid in Madrid. So from a sports perspective, one country. From economic perspective, one country. We just need to change the perspective. We started introducing taxes, customs tax last year for the first time. We're going to introduce all other taxes, because if you talk to the economic entities on the left bank, they would love nothing more than to become law-abiding European citizens, just like the rest of Moldova. Nobody in this day and age, in our region particularly, looks with any sort of optimism or hope or reassurances towards the East, especially if you are an influential person. So we see this epidemic in certain parts of Russia where influential people keep falling out of windows. You know, there is sort of this very strong draft. Nobody in the Transnistrian region wants that. They want to be part of reunited Moldova in a region of peace and economic prosperity that is the European Union. So Moldova's EU accession is a very strong pull factor for peaceful reintegration. And we are working in that regard, and we are making significant strides in that. Briefly on the question of veto and the decision-making process. We understand full well that there is legitimate skepticism, not just in the Netherlands, as our colleague was mentioning earlier. In many member states, the decision-making process in the EU is already difficult as it is. That's why it's so important that when we talk about the widening of Europe, we are also talking about the deepening of Europe. But in the meantime, we understand that we need to be constructive, that we need to be flexible, and we will be, as long as the end goal is to become a full-fledged member. How we get there, we can talk about. But as long as the goalpost remains where we agreed initially that it is, we of course will be constructive. And when it comes to local democracy and public administration, we are undergoing now a reform that has been postponed for decades, because political elites in Moldova for many years didn't have the courage to do difficult reforms. Now we are consolidating local public authorities so that they can become competitive within the EU, but also in the process of accession. Because when you have a mayoralty of 500 people, needless to say, that is difficult to be competitive. But we are doing it with emphasis on the quality of services, on the quality of democratic rights and freedoms of our citizens, including at the local level. We are doing it in partnership with our civil society and independent media. And if you look at the latest report of the Reporters Without Borders on May 3rd, Moldova's ranking in the media freedom benchmark is better than most of the countries in our region. And if you would be in Moldova these days and you would see how media and civil society are holding our feet to the fire, as they should, you would be aware that Moldova is moving in the right direction. When it comes to gender equality, there was a time, a very short time ago, where we had a woman president, which we are still incredibly pleased to have. We had a woman prime minister, chairwoman of the Constitutional Court, and a woman governor of the central bank. The only guy in power was the Speaker of the Parliament. I was Deputy Speaker back then, and I was teasing my colleague, Speaker Grosso, that he doesn't fit. So we have made important steps forward across the board. And we are very happy that now the process is delivering. We were able to finally open the first clusters, the fundamentals, which is very important. It's a shift in the accession process, but it's an important shift that is actually helping both the candidate countries and the European Union as a whole. Because it's important to start with fundamentals and to end with fundamentals, so that we build those guardrails that are very important for the candidate country, for the future member, and for the rest of the European Union alike. So we wouldn't take it any other way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mihai. Well, as a football supporter, I would like to tell even more, because Sheriff Tiraspol, as a champion of Moldova, was playing under Moldovan flag, not Transnistrian. So it is even more than one team in the country. The flag was the official one for Sheriff Tiraspol. Josip, you would like to comment also the questions?
Yes, thank you very much. The question of the possible backsliding of the newcomers within the European Union. We don't have the crystal ball, and how the things are going to organized and how they are going to be written within the European Union depends on the countries who are right now the members. We can't influence on this, but for us, we don't want, as it was said so many times, don't want to be in the integration part, second-class European Union citizens. We want to enjoy all the freedoms, all the obligations as every other citizens within the European has, whatever those obligations and freedoms are in the moment when we enter the European Union. Absorption capacity of the European Union is something which is, put in front of us for the past decade, which is basically, another word to how to try to change the rules of the voting and how to simplify the proceedings. Once again, from the other side of the fence, we cannot influence on this, but we would encourage every simplification of the enlargement process as such, because it is in every step a huge, I would say, an effort to get any decision. And it's also very pragmatic to keep in mind that, once again, Thessaloniki promise was 23 years ago. 23 years ago. Even today, 23 years after, Bosnia and Herzegovina is on 74.1% of the general support towards the membership to the European Union. And we should be, aware that great expectations don't deliver great disappointments. We have to have palpable decisions and palpable move forward of my country or any country which are under the candidacy status. And once again, fully agree, every success of the candidate country is a positive spillover effect for all of us who are in the waiting line.
Thank you, Josip. So, Ivana, would you like to
I have
comment
a
or to
feeling, that
answer the
this panel
questions?
was to sell your country how much it can bring. Now I have the feeling how much it can bring to the table of the European Union and the strength of the European Union. I think we have a lot to offer in that regard. Starting from security, energy security, our experience with fighting the hybrid threats, and going into incredible societal resilience, and the capacity to push back on things where not necessarily even the state institutions were there initially to take the lead. But I think that this was not the goal of our panel. And responding to these questions that have been voiced, I think there are several takeaways that it would be important for me as a Ukrainian politician that our EPP partners would take away from here. One is that I have mentioned, that nothing has to be can be accepted as a substitute for the full-fledged membership. But secondly, this is about these bilateral grievances that my colleague also was talking about, that have become actual structural flaws of the enlargement process, and they have to be dealt with, because as Sean has rightly said, there was a Putin's puppet who just decided that for his own reasons he can block the whole country's future, European future. And that cannot be accepted. And at the same time, the very same person has been violating a lot of very basic Copenhagen criteria inside that country. So I think that there are twofold responses to that. One is that probably there are decisions that have to be considered and have to be dealt with through QMV. But secondly, I think it's also about political courage and readiness of the European Union to use those instruments that are at your disposal in order not to allow the countries or governments that are abusing their rights inside the EU to actually carry this on. We've heard so much about Article 7 and how difficult it is, whether we should or we should not use it towards Hungary, Hungary under Orban. And I think if you acted earlier, I think we could have also stopped some of the problems, and could also that could be used as an example how to deal with the problems that you have. Also, post-enlargement, why do we think that it's only newcomers that might have those problems inside the EU? Unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of authoritarian tendencies already raising inside different European countries. And we do not have credible and strong instruments to deal with them. It brings me to the question of hybrid threats. Why do we continue calling all of those threats hybrid? Hybrid seems to be not urgent. Hybrid seems to be not scary, not really a threat. And that is, I think, also very much misleading to all of our people. So I think we have to call a spade a spade. And once you have you call this a real threat, because it's very close to military threats. It's very close to actually something that is targeting to blow you up from within, and that's not something that you would like to we would like to allow in the European Union. So I think we are talking about serious reform inside the EU. And there was a discussion right after 2022. In 2023, there was a big discussion in the EU. Okay, how do we adjust? How do we transform? How do we maybe reform? There were a certain number of different papers. I think that that discussion has shaded away right now. And I think this is a very dangerous sign, because I think that is the sign that there are a lot of words of the urgency of this enlargement process, of the urgency of the response and geopolitical and geoeconomic and geostrategic actions. But at the same time, there are not really response in actions to that urgency in terms of internal transformation. We are sitting here from the countries that want to join the European Union, and we all agree that merit-based approach is something that we would like to be fit for. But at the same time, we don't want to come to that door, you know, fully prepared, fully ready and capable, and then being taken hostage to the unfinished business of internal reform in the EU. So I think there are a lot of things that have to be kind of revitalized in terms of urgency, in terms of delivery, for the actual strength of the European Union. It's not for us, it's for the whole European continent, and for the real action capacity of the European Union. So I think we have a lot of work to do on both sides of the aisle. We do know our homework, but I think there is a lot of homework also on the side of the European Union. It has to be finished, it has to be really dealt with already now, already yesterday.
But on the other hand, I think for better understanding, it's also important direct contact on the lowest level, not on the governmental one or the national one, but also on the self-governmental level, what Sari said. Before the Polish full membership, we had in the 90s something like 2,000 twin cities agreements with German, French cities, Spanish also, so with the West, to know each other better, to know how it works, the self-government, how it works, what are the expectations of the ordinary people, and it was the also level of having better understanding for each other.
I just add one sentence. Yes, I totally agree, and we are very much engaging local communities, regions, local authorities, NGOs on the local level to use all these opportunities in terms of building these new bridges. And I think that this is definitely something where this network and this net of common capacities is
being solidarity and generator of hope. It was the
is being built. But I maybe one sentence.
We have last 3 minutes.
Yeah, just one. EPP women. Yeah. Thank you for reminding. I think EPP Women can be that organization that actually takes it to Ukraine. And I think we can do something and show the example to many strong gentlemen here who have individually traveled to Ukraine with all the gratitude, but maybe as an institution, we can organize something in Ukraine. And I think the major thing is, whatever is being prepared, and you will be preparing for the in terms of this gradual enhanced enlargement, or will not be preparing, I think it shouldn't be done for us. It should be done with all of us on all the levels.
Thank you, Ivana. And the last 2-3 minutes for North Macedonia.
I'll be very brief, because I was reminded with the hybrid threats and the cyber threats. As one of the youngest and the smallest members of NATO, the attacks that I see every day, if the cyber attacks come from Iran, China, Russia. So it's the same line that everybody sees in all of the capitals of the EU. And the answer to this, I think, is more Europe, not less Europe. Why I'm saying this? Because there is one of the biggest programs that the European Union has in digital. It's called Digital Euro Program. It's more than 6 billion euros. It's targeted to all of the EU countries plus the candidates. But for the candidates, the cyber components was closed for all these years. So for 3 years, the cyber component is closed, where we're talking about integration in the cyber defense domain. So that's why I'm thinking more Europe. You know, if we open this program as well, if we open Rome as Home initiative as well for the Western Balkans, and we see the same feeling as visa liberalization in 2008 for us, so more than almost 20 years ago, I can see that this integration can happen even earlier than the real integration starts. Not to exclude it, but to go in parallel, because I think more integration between ourselves in all these areas is the solution to the problems, not less.
Thank you very much. European People's Party was always the strongest, the most leading party among the European families. For having Europe stronger means bigger. So our obligation is to help you, but you are also close to us. And I hope it will be success in coming future, because we have no time to lose. So because we have no time to lose, we have to go to conclusions. So I would like to ask Claudia Bauer, the Federal Minister for Europe, for Integration and Family from Austria. And I would like to thank our guests. Now we are going to conclude the second panel. Claudia, the floor is yours. Let's have a pause.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, dear Chancellor Christian Stocker, dear President Manfred Weber, dear colleagues from all over Europe, dear ministers, state secretaries, members of parliament, members of the European Parliament. We are happy to have you here and host you here in Vienna. It is a pleasure to be here at the Political Assembly on enlargement. As politicians, it is our task to build the framework towards a better future here in Europe, and in my case, as a Minister for Europe, Integration and Family Affairs, one of my priorities is to improve the European Union and make it fit for the future, fit for the next generations. And when we talk about Europe's future, we must always talk about enlargement policy. As many of you know, the Western Balkans integration into the EU remains a priority for Austria. And I firmly believe that the future of the Western Balkans is within the European Union. And let me say, on a personal note, that conviction only grew stronger during my tour of the region last year. 6 countries within 6 days was the motto. The integration of the Western Balkans is not only a matter of fairness and credibility, but more importantly, it is a matter of Europe's security and stability, especially given the current geopolitical environment. The countries of the Western Balkans belong to the European Union. They have been waiting in the EU's waiting room, and that has already been mentioned before, for far too long. And I absolutely understand the frustration about this. It is really high time that we live up to our promises, and I therefore welcome the new momentum in recent years. But I also always make it very clear that enlargement must remain a merit-based process applying the same rules to all candidates. We must keep this momentum and continue along this path in the future to achieve our common goal of the Western Balkans becoming a member of the European Union. And in my view, continuing this includes the following. Firstly, Montenegro must join the EU as soon as possible. The final steps are always the most difficult ones, but I am convinced that we will succeed. Montenegro joining the EU would be a clear signal to both, to the European Union and the candidate countries. We already heard from the spillover effect, and I think at the moment we underestimate the spillover effect to other candidate countries when they see that it comes true and that it is not just a carrot always taken away by the European Union. To see that a country like Montenegro can make it happen, I think this might be a good best practice example, and we need these success stories. Secondly, the momentum must also be maintained in the other candidate countries. Albania, in particular, is making good progress and will likely be the next in line. And we also sense the will to make progress in North Macedonia and Serbia. At the same time, however, we must not forget the remaining 2 countries, Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina. We know that the situation is more challenging for various reasons, but Austria will keep pushing and staying by your side. And thirdly, we must definitely continue working towards gradual integration, a concept that was originally devised by Austria and has proven itself in the past. The accession process takes a long time. There is no fast track. Therefore, we need to maintain the quality of the process and the membership. And this makes it all the more important that people in the candidate countries already feel the first benefits on their path to the EU, that it pays off to stay on track and to set the necessary reforms. And in this regard, we have already taken an important step with gradual integration of several Western Balkan countries into SEPA area. Hopefully the next step will be the roaming-free area, where we can see tangible results of EU integration. It is also important for me to emphasize gradual integration is not a substitute for membership, but a complementary tool to deliver quick and tangible results for the citizens of the candidate countries in order to help securing the support of EU membership and strengthening the pro-European forces. I think we need that as well within the European Union. And of course, enlargement also concerns Ukraine and Moldova. And Austria has always expressed its support for the EU perspective of both countries, but the momentum generated by the progress of Ukraine and Moldova must also translate in further steps on the Western Balkans. I am convinced if we can find creative solutions and overcome bilateral concerns for Ukraine and Moldova in that case, we can also do so for our friends in the Western Balkans. Let me conclude by saying this. The future of the Western Balkans is closely linked to the future of Europe and the European Union. The path to European integration requires political determination, mutual trust, and ongoing dialogue. That is precisely why events like today are of great importance. They create opportunities to exchange ideas, to strengthen mutual understanding, and to bring together people that think alike within the European People's Party and people who are committed to a shared European project, to a shared European vision. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best, and for all of us, a good evening at Heuriger in Vienna. Thank you for being in Vienna.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Minister. Thank you, Claudia. I would like to thank you for the participation. Thank you for activity and the questions. And now I think, Dolores, it's time for the resolution because we have something concrete in the end. The resolution